Before we dive in, quick heads up. For a limited time in January, we're offering 25% off an annual Chase Club membership. Plus, anyone who signs up or is already a member gets automatically entered to win some awesome prize packs. We're talking about CompTrend subscriptions, discounts to future Enlifted certifications, and more. Just head to chasingexcellence.email to jump in. All right, let's get into the episode. Hello, and welcome back to the show, and welcome to 2026. The new year is here, and with it comes the familiar pull of the resolutions, the fresh starts, the promises we make to ourselves about who we're going to become. But if you're like most people, those resolutions will be gone by February, maybe even sooner. Not because you lack motivation, not because you don't want to change, but because you're building on sand instead of bedrock. You're setting goals without clarity. You're chasing outcomes without understanding who you are becoming or who you refuse to become. We recently, just last week, published a brand new essay called Excellence is a Direction You Face, Not a Destination You Reach. You can find it at the link in the show notes. In it, we broke down a framework for getting clear on three things: your vision, your anti-vision, and your values. This compilation episode is the raw material behind that essay. There are three conversations that show this framework in practice, not as theory, but as lived experience. First, Ben and I dig into what vision and anti-vision actually are, how they work together as a push-pull system, how they help you make decisions, and why you need both to create the channel your life flows through. In our second episode, we're going to bring back the conversation we had with Robert Glazer, who joined us to talk through the process of discovering your core values, not the inspirational words on a poster, but the operational filters you actually use when life gets complicated. And then finally, our friend Mark England showed us the power of writing everything down, because clarity doesn't exist in your head. It emerges when you pick up the pen, or the magic wand, as Mark calls it, and start articulating what you actually believe. These aren't separate practices. They're actually all one integrated system, or at least they should be. Your vision tells you where you're headed. Your anti-vision tells you what you're running from, and your values tell you how to make the thousands of small decisions that either move you toward one or the other. If you haven't read the essay yet, we encourage you to start there. You'll find the link in the show notes. It's the blueprint. This episode brings together the conversations that shaped the writing of the essay. And if you find value in this episode or in the essay, if something clicks, if something shifts, please share it with somebody who needs to hear it, someone who's stuck, somebody who's drifting, somebody who's ready to stop reacting to life and start directing it. Okay, let's get into our first episode, all about vision and anti-vision. Let's start with vision. It is something that you and I have talked about a bit before, but I want to do a sort of an update. When you say vision, when we say vision, as we get into this conversation, what do we mean by that word? And maybe more importantly, what do we mean in terms of how we incorporate a vision into our lives?
Well, I think what we want to do in terms of vision of our own lives, and whether it's a vision of our own lives or vision for a business or vision for your family, here's what we want to be able to do is lead ourselves. So in the terms of vision of our lives, we want to be able to lead our own lives. And in Stephen Covey's words, is we want to begin with the end in mind. So to continue to steal from other people, Jim Collins has really this is something I think about all the time now, which is the number one responsibility for a leader is to create a clear and compelling vision that is shared and acted upon by all. So if we want to lead ourselves, we need to create a clear and compelling, two really important words there, clear, like not fuzzy, not like I'd like to be financially free and healthy. No, like not that at all. Like clear, like what is exactly that? And compelling, something that you are excited to buy into. So clear and compelling vision that is shared, in this case, with yourself, that you know and acted upon, that you can then hold yourself accountable. So we've done this in a number of, we have a number of different components to this. The way that I make up a vision is very much borrowed from Gino Wickman's Entrepreneur's Organizational System. I think it's probably the strongest aspect along with quarterly rocks, but even like OKRs, I think I think that Gino Wickman's shared vision is the best that I've seen. And it really comes down to...
we've been stealing that for years.
Completely.
Yeah.
It comes down to these... so people go like, well, people have a vision statement. Other people have a mission statement. Other people have goals. Other people have and it's like, people have... It really comes down to these few integral pieces, which is, what are your values? So vision. Like, vision is like, what do you values? Meaning, what did you think is important to yourself? Like, what is important to you? What is your purpose? You can call that your passion if you want to. And that is your why. And this is your North Star. And it doesn't change. Like, this should be the thing that is kind of like built into your DNA for basically the majority, your entirety of your adult life. You probably have the same feeling of purpose.
I use the word mission, but it's very, maybe it's different.
The next one, yes, correct. This is the big kind of conflicting thing that people, I think, don't clarify, again, clear, is then you have a mission. So if you have this North Star, which is your purpose statement, if you want to, it can be kind of, it's kind of vague, right? To live a fulfilled life might be a purpose statement. Like that is what I feel like I am on earth to do, or like to be a strong representation of the Almighty, whatever it might be, right? You know, to have impact on others, purpose statement. But your mission might change every 5-10 years or so as you mature and different things come into your life. Certainly my mission when I was 20 is very different than it is when I'm almost 50. Yep. When I have children and other things, my mission is different. So if you think of your purpose as this North Star, the mission might be these different mountain ranges that you navigate on the path towards that purpose. So now you have this values, you have your purpose, you have your mission, and then that final fourth component piece is, what is that big, hairy, audacious goal? Again, going back to Jim Collins' words. What is that, in my term, measurable thing that you're saying, hey, in 5 years, 6 years, this is what I'm after? And to me, that one, if that one becomes a little more extrinsic, I'm okay with that one a little bit. Meaning, like, I want to have a $1 million net worth, right? I want to, and it's got to be big. If you know how to achieve it now, it's too small. Together, those four components, values, those are kind of like tough to pinpoint, but for me, just to kind of put some clarity to it, I have the 5 H's: humble, hungry, happy, honest, and healthy. So I have the 5 H's. For me, my purpose is to live a well-lived life full of purpose, poise, passion, and balance. From there, I have a mission statement, which is to put my family first. And then the big, hairy, audacious goal is to have a Cape house. So a place we can call our own on the Cape, and to be able to spend a month out west skiing every winter. Nice. I have no idea. My kids are in school. I have no idea how to do that. But that's the idea behind a big, hairy, audacious goal. You shouldn't know. You shouldn't have the strategies and the tactics and the plan to figure that thing out. So, kind of wrapping it all together, if we want to lead ourselves, we need to have a clear and compelling vision that is you understand and you're acting on.
Dig that. Okay, so there's some things to dig into there, but real quick, because I think people like examples, I'm going to give a quick scan because I do similar, and I'm going to ask a question about difference here. So my values, I just call them key pillars because I think, as we've said before, I think values are one of those words that like people throw. I
actually like that a lot. It's like, yeah, you get the eye roll with values.
Yeah,
like right. Yep. But what are your key pillars?
Yeah, my key pillars. And so I want to ask you about how they show up in your life. But I'll just give mine. Mine are, and again, I stole this from you. This little, I don't know if this is alliteration, but it's the 3 C's: control, creativity, and congruency. And so control is just about focusing on the few things in my life that I can actually control. Creativity is just not following the default path. And congruency is working to close the gap between my thoughts, my words, and my actions. So those are my 3 key pillars. And then I don't have a purpose, but I feel like my mission is a bit of a combination.
Just throwing that out there. I have no purpose.
no purpose. But I feel like I have a mission statement, but I do feel like it kind of checks a few of the boxes that you were talking about with purpose. And it's my mission is to be a role model who shows what it looks like to live a life focused on what matters and who helps others create a life of focus and meaning for themselves. So I feel like there's a little bit in there. There's maybe some wiggle room in terms of the purpose and the mission, but I like that. And the big hairy goal, I took this from you. I have what I just call a 10-year target, which is similar, but it's not, and it's not as quite as buttoned up as like those two, measurable things for you. So talk to me first about the value of the big, hairy, audacious goal being something as clear and simple and yes, no as Cape House in a month in the West versus what I have, which is like 2 or 3 paragraphs of like, this is what I want my life to look like in 10 years.
Yeah, I don't think that's wrong.
Okay.
As long as it is, to me, so we played with this a lot, particularly on the business side, and I play with it personally as well. When all 3 are not, or I should say then all 4 are not truly like check the box, pass, fail, did it, done it, because right now if I go like, hey, Patrick, for your mission, are you doing that right now? I know what your answer is going to be. It's like, yeah, kind of like, I think that, it's going to be that.
Yep.
Where it's like, Patrick, do you have a Cape House? It's like, no, I
Nope.
I think that that creates the level of clarity around it. Like certain businesses have done this. Some do it again as a more esoteric, a little more loose, a little more freedom. But I like the really specific. When I changed this for our team, I saw like the eyes get wider and the head started to nod. And I was like, ooh, I'm onto something there. So just to give that concretely, our big heritage goal as the gym for a long time, over a decade, was to be considered the best CrossFit gym in the world.
Yep, I remember that.
And there's no way we know if we get that. If we that was weird. I put a little accent in there. There's no way to know if we've actually achieved that. So it becomes this sort of like, again, directional thing. Like we're going in that direction. But that's what the other ones are all about, right? Yes, you can operationalize them, but they're all kind of doing that. When we changed from let's try to be the best gym in the world to change it to let's have 6 coaches earning 6 figures. Mm-hmm. Everyone went, oh yeah, I can see what we need to do differently from where we are now to get that. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I know we're not there right now. When I said the best CrossFit gym in the world, people are like, some of them are going like, oh, well, are we? Like, are we, like, is it wasn't as, the big heritage goal is supposed to be the ones that you go like, F yeah, let's go do that thing.
Yep.
Like the why is like what you wake up and you're like, you wake up every morning, you're like, I have alignment with my life. Like it's a intrinsic thing. Like actions are aligned with values. It's the kind of thing that ties it all together. Mission is, okay, to get to our purpose, what's the thing we kind of be focusing on in the next 10 years?
Yeah, and you mentioned this a little bit right at the top, which is just the value of specificity. And I'd love to know why you think the specificity does it, why the 6 coaches earning 6 figures lit people's eyes up when be the best gym in the world maybe was like, yeah, let's do that, but didn't get people to sit up in their seats, right? I'd love to know why the former does it when the latter doesn't, and why it's important for us when we think about our lives to have something specific and big and hairy and audacious, and even if we don't know how we're going to get it. What
we're trying to do is that clear and compelling vision that's shared and acted upon by all. The way you get them to act upon it is they get excited about it.
Yep.
So they can go, oh, I can envision how that benefits me. So as a team, you want something that will actually like, if we're named the best gym in the world, like they get that pride of like, hey, I work at the best gym in the world. But again, that's the ambiguity of like, are we there? What do we have to do to get there? When I go, hey guys, when that's double most people's salaries, people stand up and go, oh yeah, let's go do that. I have to do extra work to make that happen. Like, sign me up. I'm on board. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing is like, it's the first, like, I will be willing to do the extra work because that dopamine thing of like, I am getting closer to my goals. And you have to kind of say, it's literally like, I want to get in better shape. Okay, I want to run a sub 3-hour marathon. Okay. Like, I want to be under 10% body fat. Okay. I want like that. It's a very specific part of it. So I think that some people might go, no, those are really transactional. Those are extrinsic. Those aren't the things that are going to create real happiness and fulfillment. I don't know. I think I would really love to be spending a month, because here's the other part is I do think that they all should be tied to, especially these personal ones. And we'll get this but vision, a stronger vision has to do with how are you going to be spending your days rather than what are you going to have. So when I say Cape House and a month out west skiing, that is not because I want my friends to look at me and go, oh my gosh, look at that. He has a vacation home. It's not because I see it as an investment that will increase my net worth. It's because I can see having that home what my days are going to look like. Yep. I can envision with the family what us waking up in the morning at our own place, and that's amazing. It's like some of the best times of my life are spent in that spot. Similar is if we are spending that time, I'm with my kids, like I'm with my wife. I have a calm. It's like a big part of this is like there's a calmness with those two things. So it's what do those two things represent? It's not that I want those to boost my ego and go like the status and the wealth games. It is if I have those two things, those are representative of how of my everyday, what that's going to look like. Of not just my everyday, but if I'm going to be skiing out west for 4 or 5 weeks every winter, that represents my physical capacity. That represents my financial freedom. That represents the things that I'm thinking about at that time. So they're not just like, to me, it's very different than I want a Ferrari. Like that would not be the thing. That's very different to me than I want to own $500,000 in Bitcoin. Like it's not have the things to have the things. It's what do those things represent. Yep.
I like that. You know, it's both obvious, but perhaps worth pointing out is the word vision. It needs to be something that we can see in our minds, in our imaginations. And I like what you just did. And I think it's a helpful maybe trigger or spark for the conversation or thinking, folks out there thinking, which is like, what do I want? What and who do I want to see? Who do I want to be with? What do I want to feel? Right? Like these actual, like tangible things that you want in your life, that you want to be able to do in your life for the people you want to be around. Start with those things and then work backwards from what does that actually look like? What is an exciting vision of a life that does those things? And I think that that's the beginning of, if folks don't have a vision for themselves, the beginning of creating or constructing a vision for themselves. I would love to know, before we move on to anti-vision, a two-part question. One is, do you get the sense that most people have a vision for their lives? And then two, if not, what holds people back from having this big, hairy, audacious goal, the mission, the purpose, the values, et cetera? What is the barrier that stands in the way of having these things, having this vision that will allow us to move in the direction that we hope to move?
So to answer the first one, do I think most people do? The answer is sadly no, I don't. And the kind of understanding of that, or the reason I feel like that, is most businesses don't have this. Yep. Most businesses don't have the clear and compelling vision that is acted and shared upon by all. And the reason that they don't is not for a lack of understanding the impact it might have, but the twofold. First is the inability to pop out of the busyness and the urgency of the day to look at the more important, right? And we've talked about this a lot from Covey, urgent versus important. And they have to pay the bills. They have to cover for their employees. They have to make the next widgets. They have to manage the next partner relationships, and they don't create the time to be able to, and here's the second part, work through this as a framework. And if you don't have the framework, this is a messy process, because if I was to ask somebody that hadn't been exposed to this key pillars, vision statement, mission, and big heritage goal, and gone, what is the vision for your life? That you don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. And because you don't know where to start, you don't. Like if I ask you, like, do you want to get into shape? Every single person is raising their hand saying yes. Mm-hmm. And I say, okay, what are you going to do to get in better shape? And the hands start to go down. And it's the same thing with this. Like, do you want a more aligned, inspired, and fulfilled life? Every hand goes up. And I say, what does that framework look like? What does it look like to have an aligned, inspired, and fulfilled life? And the hands start to go back down. So when you allow somebody the space to be able to explore this with the framework, it's more like plug and play. It's more Mad Libs. It's more fill in the blank, as opposed to this esoteric thought experiment of, please come up with the vision for what your life wants to look like. And people don't know where to start.
Yep. Let us introduce the idea of anti-vision, because it would allow us to continue this conversation with a slightly different angle. This idea of an anti-vision, I first came across it not even that long ago in a book called The Art of Focus by Dan Coe. So I'm just going to read a little bit from that book just as a way to enter into this conversation, or this part of the conversation. Dan Coe writes this: it's easier to know what you don't want from experience than it is to know what you want from imagination. Mm-hmm. But realize that imagination holds a lot of power. You need experience to fuel imagination. And when the two are combined, you create a frame that is impossible to distract your focus. Create an anti-vision for your future. Write out every single thing you don't want, why you don't want it, and how you are going to avoid it. What does an unfulfilling day look like to you? What kind of person would you avoid as a significant other? How do you not want to look, feel, and act? How much money is too little to sustain your lifestyle? Why is it too little? What won't you be able to do with that money? What environment would you hate living in? Why? Mm-hmm. So again, just as an entry point to this idea of the anti-vision here, I love what he broke down there, or he kind of breaks down there, which is like these 4 categories that we can begin to construct our anti-vision around, which is what is our daily life, our work life, our relationships, and our financial life. So let's just maybe start there.
Yeah. So just to start and double down on that, I think it's really cool to say, like, what he laid out there is when you combine this experience with imagination. I love those words of, I'm going to probably butcher it, but it's impossible to distract yourself from that vision. Yep. I mean, like, if you are able to, it's very much what we do with the business, and what I try to do when I track this on a daily basis. Like, am I doing the things that are aligned with getting me closer to my vision? You are on a path. There is no standing still. If you are standing still, you are taking a step backwards, because the world is continually moving forward. So standing still is backwards. If you're not actively taking steps forward closer to your vision, you're not in alignment. And that's a really yucky feeling. So I want to just, like, that is so cool, is like, from my experiences I've had in the past, which have massively shaped my vision going forward. I don't want that job I had before. I don't want to wash dishes. I've done that. I don't want to work in a restaurant. I've done that. I don't want to work in a cubicle. I've done that. I don't want lack of purpose or meaning with my work. I've done that. I don't want to be surrounded with these types of people. I've been there. It feels crappy. So it is so much easier to say what you don't want than maybe what you do want from imagination. But it is the combination of the two that are the real power. But yes, you broke those down into 4 categories: daily life, work life, environment, and relationships. Is that right? Yep. Okay.
Daily life, work life, relationships, financial life. I don't know if you just said that, but in a different order.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't either.
We'll say we got it.
Yeah.
So let's start with daily life.
Okay. So what do I not want? And again, from experience, I know this. I don't want to wake up. I'm going to say the word, because I think it's going to paint a better picture for this. I don't want to wake up hungover. Now, hungover doesn't necessarily mean I've drank too much. Hungover could be from a lot of things, right? Hungover could be from lack of sleep. Hungover could be just from like staying up too late or whatever it is, or too much stress, or eating really crappy, or lack of excitement in my life. Basically, like, I don't want to wake up and go, I want to stay under the covers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the first thing is I really don't want that. When I start my day, I don't want to be reactive, meaning I don't want to start my day responding to the urgency around me that I have no control over, from emails and text messages to interruptions, to shout out to Cal Newport, who was just on the show, but no deep work, right? All this is just like a shallow busyness with no actual meaning or productivity.
Yep.
I don't want to have my day filled with a kind of solitude or lots of people around, but no real connection, like surface level conversations, right? Just full of small talk. So I want the space to be by myself, to think deeply, but I also want to be able to connect deeply with others, with shared passions, shared values. I want to move. So that's a vision. I should say this the other way. I don't want to be sedentary,
Yep.
right? I don't want physical stillness. I want to feel, because I've had that as well. I want to feel alive. Like, it's just like, I want to feel alive. And if I am still or sedentary, I feel my body rotting. It's one of those things that I've internalized, and it's when it values, right? This is what values, key pillars, as you said. Health is for me. What I have told myself is, if you're not moving, if you're not training, if you're not active, if you're not doing that thing, you're rotting away. What does that do? It builds my identity, which it builds my behaviors, which takes actions. Then it becomes that self-fulfilling loop. You want to actually tell yourself these stories of how you build the important things in your lives. That's how you operationalize the key pillars. Mm-hmm. With that, I don't want to be lazy, meaning nothing really excites me. I'm not interested in things. I'm more passive. There's no levels of curiosity. And instead, I kind of sit on the sidelines and judge, right? Mm-hmm. That to me is like a terrible existence. I want to be in the arena, doing, building, creating. People point fingers, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I don't want to be lazy. I don't do well with lazy. And maybe it's because I have some laziness built into me. Mm-hmm. So when I succumb to it, I'm like, don't you do that. Yep. I feel like one of the biggest things I'm fighting against is the drift, which is I'm just on the river going down at the speed of the river, not controlling where I'm going. Yep. And this is one of the big reasons is this, we've talked about this, but this fear I have of, like, if I take a couple days off from the gym, I'm like, I'm going to end up like the end of dodgeball, like Ben Stiller, like and that's the story I tell it. So I'm stay active. Like I don't want to drift at all.
I like that because you just combine the two things there, which is just being on a lazy river. You've talked about lazy, you talked about river.
Right.
It's where you're just imagining yourself on a lazy river. But it's also really important to point out, at least I'm assuming a little bit, but we've talked about this before, like you've had in the past times when you weren't active and you remember what that was like. You remember what it was like to be on the lazy river and not on the active path. And so that's where this anti-vision is really strong, because it's not what we said at the top. It's not the imagination. I'm not imagining a life in which I'm not active. I'm remembering a life where I wasn't active and how that felt and the results of those things. And so I'm bringing those memories up, and instead of beating myself up for them, instead of being shamed by them and probably therefore pushing them away and not thinking about them, I'm using them as firepower to push me forward and not drag me backwards.
That's exactly right. This is a big thing is, we've talked about this where I have a happy list on my phone. Like, what are things that bring me joy and happiness? What are things that if I do repeatedly, I feel will create fulfillment in my life? This is that opposite list, right? Mm-hmm. And the only way you create this list, either of those lists, is through experience. Yep. You go through that hard weeks of training and or launching the product and burning the midnight oil. In the moment, it feels really hard and challenging, but you go, wow, that was awesome. Yep. So then you realize that that's the thing that makes you feel awesome. These things like when I don't talk to my family, or I feel like and everyone's had this experience, like you're a little bit more disconnected. You're traveling, you miss the phone calls, and you spent the day not talking to your family. You go to bed that night with this level of anxiety, of this disconnection, of this yuckiness. So of this wondering, right? Like take out the wondering in the bad way, not wondering of curiosity, wonder of like fear and judgment. So from these experiences that were suboptimal experiences, you now have this avoid list. Like, this is what I don't want this thing to look like. And this is the anti-vision. So maybe to round out like what the day looks like is, maybe the other things is there's just this like emotional immaturity, right? Which is like, again, this reactive thing, but not reactive to the urgency of the outside stimulus, but like this idea that like I'm not centered. I hate the idea of living a life where something from the outside can knock my inside off center. Yep. And I want to feel confident. I want to feel in control. I want to feel like I have agency over my life. I want to feel like I'm living in alignment. And here's maybe one of the bigger ones is I want that. I don't want that feeling, because I've had this as well, which is I've done something wrong, and man, I hope I don't get found out. Right? That is such a terrible feeling. And it could be like, as a kid, right? You snuck out of the house and like, hope I don't get caught. Like, terrible feeling. You just did something that isn't aligned with your values. And it's a small, you're like, like just carrying. I want to feel light. I don't want to feel heavy. I don't want to carry around burdens or guilts or inconsistencies. I don't want my mind to have to try to play those games. I want peace of mind. So free of regret, free of disappointment, free of what ifs. So that's a big one for me, is just that, again, as you said, what is the feeling I have? I don't want anxiety. I want to feel light. I want calm, all of that.
How do you, when you think about these things for an anti-vision, how conscious are you of the vision that you've also laid out for yourself? Or are they separate just in the sense of what you're trying to identify, or what we're trying to identify are those moments of feeling like I am not, like this isn't it, whether it's today or whether it's this month or whether it's my job or whether it's this relationship? How much should we try to connect or tie or align the vision and the anti-vision?
I think they're one and the same. So it's just said which way. Are you pushing something away or pulling something towards you? Yep. Are you focusing on the haves or the have-nots? Are you
the do's or the do-nots?
Correct. So in my, I want the feeling I have when I am close with my parents. I want that feeling. So what do I not want? I don't want to feel distance, separate. I don't know which one I like, but it's that you ask an athlete, like, which do you like more? Do you like winning more, or do you hate losing more? And it's not the right answer, but it doesn't matter. It's both the same things, as you want a certain outcome. So in order for me to avoid the bad feelings I have of when I feel disconnected from my parents, now I put in the action step points, which is why I actually track these things. So I have, love as one of my things that I want to be paying attention to. And I make sure that I call my parents at least, a couple times a week. And that's really simple. I've also gone through periods where I don't track that and it goes off the rails, right? And I don't even realize I haven't done it because the life, the urgency and all the other things and the busyness take over. And you get like 8, 9, 10 days and you're like, oh my God, I almost don't even want to call them right now, because you start telling like, are they upset that I haven't called them? And now you're like, oh, I'm not going to call them today just because I just don't want to deal with that if there is sort of any like passive aggressiveness towards this, and there probably isn't, but I just want to, so you put off another day. It's like, holy cow. So how do you avoid that feeling where you're storytelling, where there's anxiety, where there's that unhealthy wonder? And the way to do it is to steer towards these other things. Good relationships. What does good relationship mean? It means that you're the frequency. For me, for my parents, it's frequency of, you kind of like go, okay, what is it for each one of these things? For Heather, it's a combination of a bunch of things, right? But one of the big ones I've realized with Heather is she is time and touch. Like she gets tons out of a hug, right? For my dad, it is about just frequency. Like it's like if there's as long as there's a conversation, it doesn't get weird. And even more so my mom probably. So it's like you understand from their perspective what's going to keep this thing going down the right path.
Yep. Yeah. The little quote we started this with, this idea of it's easier to know what you don't want from experience than it is to know what you do want from imagination. And thinking about the question I asked a little bit ago about like why people don't have one of these and what to do to begin to design a vision for yourselves with even the framework that we gave, I actually think that sitting down and writing sort of what you just did for us, but in each one of these categories, daily life, work life, relationships, and financial life, is literally come up with, and this is kind of what I did when I first came across this idea of antivision. It's like, I just want 3 to 5 things that explain what I don't want. Again, based on everything that I know, based on my experience, based on the context, based on where my life is now. And that's really, I think, a really good place, because once you have that on paper, you can simply say, not simply, but you can say, what is the opposite of this? What is the life what life exists if these things aren't happening, if I'm not doing these things? And at least it can begin to give you a first draft of what that vision might look like. And I think that could be really helpful for folks who maybe haven't sat down to create a vision for their lives. I think 10, 15, 20 things that you do not want, that you do not want your life to look like, and then just flip your perspective and say, okay, well, if that was a different person, what would their life look like if they lived according to that anti-vision? There's
kind of 2 different approaches to this. One is like top down, and the other one is like bottom up. And the vision exercise is like top down. Like, okay, what's your purpose? Like, what do you feel like would give you a fulfilled life? And what is your mission? That's very top down. What are your key pillars? The other one, which you're saying, is bottom up, which you can go, what do I not want? And not even what do I not want, the antithesis that is my vision. What do I not want? And then you go, what are the actions I'm going to take every day to make sure that that doesn't happen? That's the bottom up. And then you start to go, okay, because it goes identity, beliefs, actions, right? So identity, beliefs, actions. If you don't know what your identity is, you don't understand how to get this process started, you don't know what the beliefs are that you have, my key pillars, my values, start with the other part. Start with the actions. And just start with what you don't want. Like, I don't want to be addicted to cigarettes. Okay, what do you need to do to make sure you're not addicted to cigarettes? Don't ever buy cigarettes. Maybe don't hang out with people that smoke. That makes it a whole lot easier. And now I'm just putting that because it's such a black and white, easy one. But the other ones are, okay, I don't want to be ashamed of my body. I don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck. I don't want to be in a toxic, abusive relationship. What are the things we need to do to make sure that that doesn't happen? And all of a sudden, your actions start spinning up towards your belief system. You go, this is what I believe. This is who I am. This is what I value. And then you kind of work on the vision in a more direct and concrete, begin with the end in mind from there. I want to begin to move into
the conversation about kind of integrating these ideas or putting these ideas into action, maybe a little bit more practically. I want to start with a little excerpt from, we send out every weekday in the morning, we send out something called the Daily Chase, which is to our Chase Club members at chasingexcellence.email. There's just these short little essays, just kind of get our day started. And this is from Daily Chase number 23, which is, think of it like sailing. Knowing your destination is crucial, but being aware of the hazards you want to avoid is equally important. When you have both ends of the spectrum clearly defined, what you're moving toward and what you're moving away from, you create a complete picture of your life's direction. This clarity becomes particularly valuable when you're faced with decisions. Like a traveler with both a map and a list of places to avoid, you can more easily recognize when you're veering towards something you've specifically identified as undesirable. So I read that just to move us into, like, what does it actually look like to use the vision and use the anti-vision as a filter through which we make decisions, as a means by which we say this way or that way or yes or no. How do we, because I think it's really easy, and I've fallen into this trap myself, which is like, oh, I have my vision, it's all set up, and I've got this anti-vision, but my daily decisions don't ultimately change very much, or at least not to the degree that I'd like them to. And so how do we begin to bring the vision, the anti-vision down from the clouds and into the dirt?
Yeah, so this is a matter of operationalizing. So you take these statements, you take these beliefs, you take these principles, and you bring them down into the daily actions, so that you're doing more of it than you are not, right? And you're, and said another way, the ones that are pull you away, you're doing less of than you are. So for myself, so I have what I'm trying to steer towards, and we've talked about this before, but I have 20 things that I track on a daily basis to make sure that I'm steering in the right direction. And every month, something might get tweaked of those 20, or something might drop off and a new one might come on. But directionally, they're all the same. One category has to do with my health. So it's again, obviously a huge Stephen Covey fan. I think that if there's one self-help book to read, and basically every other self-help book that's ever been invented is a derivative of 7 Habits. And he says basically we all have these 4 core parts of our lives, which is to live, love, lead, and learn. He says leave a legacy, but I call that leadership, because it's not about building statues. It's not about that. But his idea is share your wisdom, share that, so that the people, you're impacting others. So that's leadership. And leadership come in the form of mentoring, helping, or charity, or whatever you want to call it.
Parenting.
Parenting, for sure. So live, love, lead, and learn. And what I've done is, of those, I create 4 or 5 of different things to track on a daily basis of those things. So if, for me, I've figured out what are the things that anti-vision that are missing out of my life for enough period of time, I start to feel weird about them. Mm-hmm. And that is things like, if we don't have family dinner every night, but if we don't have family dinner for like 5 nights in a row, that starts to feel weird. And I want to make sure that's not the case. So I'm tracking, when was the last time we had a family dinner? And hopefully there's more check boxes than not, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It's the same thing that I'll do for different things in terms of my health. And this is probably the one that rotates the most, honestly, because I go on different little kicks. Yep. So it'll be, how often am I running? In the summer, a lot of times I'll have running in there. Or am I doing 10 minutes of mobility every day? So what I found is, like, if I don't do mobility for 10 minutes long enough, I start to feel weird. So it's like, we have a saying in the business, which is don't let it be weird, right? Like, if you have something to say to somebody and you don't say it to them, and you kind of hold it yourself, or you, even worse, like, say it to somebody else, that's going to be weird, right? If coaches are talking to their classes and there's side conversations going on, the coach doesn't realize, that's weird. Like, if you went into any classroom at any grade and the teacher was presenting and some of the students were having their own side conversations, that's weird. So, like, don't let it get weird. So what are the things that are going to keep you on the path? Don't let it get weird. Like, stay on the path. So this is how you operationalize it. You go, here are the things that are important to me. What are the things I'm going to do on a daily or certainly a weekly basis? I don't call my parents every day, but I try to make sure that They both get called every week. I need at least 2 check marks on there, and that are going to move me closer to my goals. And sometimes those change a little bit. Like right now, I'm very much focused on deepening my male friendships. I think this happens as you get closer to 50. I'm starting to feel it certainly in my 40s, but now that I'm almost 50 now, this is a very obvious void in my life. So I'm tracking that now. I'm like, what am I doing to make sure that I'm getting closer to that goal? A vision. I want deeper, more meaningful male relationships in my life. How am I going to do that? It's turning vision into action. You operationalize it and you track it, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. If you are making the incremental moves, the aggregation of marginal gains, the accumulation of very small things accumulate, they compound into very, very big things. So this is how we do it, is we just make sure that we are living in alignment with our vision. So a clear and compelling vision that is shared and acted upon by all. And I'm sure we're actually putting this into practice.
Yeah. I did something similar with the tracking, obviously inspired by stuff we've talked about before. I do it slightly different. I've got 18 things to track, and I do them across 6 different categories.
What are your
6 categories? Are the 5 factors, slightly broader though. I do move instead of training so that I can have more than just one checkbox. So for me, it's the 3 things in the move category are train, but it's also get 9,000 steps. And then the third one is do crossover symmetry. So nice, obviously just like you, like it's not every day, but
those have been in mine as well.
Yeah.
I've tracked
and so I do move, think, connect, rest instead of sleep, because again, sleep is pretty narrow. Sleep is like the number 1 of the check marks, but then I do other things like read fiction or watch comedy. And then I've got another one. And then the 6th one though is actually vision. And so I've got 3 check marks for vision, one of them being review the plan. So in other words, I give myself credit for actually reading through the vision, reading through the anti-vision, reading through one thing that I want to get to, which is what I think Cal Newport called the narrative test when we talked to him recently, which is to write out what an ideal day looks like. And so anyways, my point is though, similar to you, is I've got these things that I can look at and say, am I moving in the right direction? Or are my days focused on the things that matter? Or am I distracted by whatever I might be distracted by? And when you do that over a long enough period, you can say, oh, wow, I'm really trending up or I'm trending down, or I'm really missing this thing. Why am I missing this thing? Why aren't I doing crossover symmetry 3 to 5 times a week like I say I should, like I want to? And it's like, okay, I haven't figured out when in the day I should be doing it. So like I can go backwards a little bit and say, all right, well, when am I going to do cross? So you can sort of like figure out on a very logistical sense, like when am I going to do the things that I say are the important things? And in a similar way, what I found is when you fill your plate up with fruits and vegetables and lean protein, you just simply have less room to eat a cookie or the bread or whatever it might be. And I think the same thing happens when you intentionally fill your day with the actions and the activities that move you towards your vision and away from your anti-vision. Is you simply have less time for the things that don't matter. You have less time for Netflix because tomorrow morning I'm going to have to either say, yes, I got enough sleep or I didn't get enough sleep, right? So you can give yourself a bit of a check on the laziness or the bad behaviors or the distractions or whatever it might be that on a daily basis slowly pull us away. But those slow pulls away after a month or after 3 months, you'll look back and you'll think like, I haven't talked to my mom in 3 months. I haven't gotten to the gym in 3 months. And you're like 6 Tuesdays ago, you didn't realize it. But when you have these things in place, you can look back and say, that's when it started to fall apart. And then you can also say, this is how I'm going to fix it.
I love that, man. Yeah. I think the fact that you give yourself credit, if you will, or at least it's a check in, like, am I doing this thing? And that is that I do that as well. And I think it's I think it's an important part of this. Is that you're giving yourself credit for, as you said, doing the important things. Well, one of the important things is tracking this. So one of my checkboxes is like, am I tracking? It'd be crazy to say no, like that's going to be there. It's going to be default. It's like, no, like if this didn't happen, it would feel weird after a while. So you want to keep that going. So that congruence. And then the second part is just that idea that we've heard a bunch is, show me your calendar and I'll show you your values. I'll tell you what's important to you. I think that's partly true because your calendar isn't always what ends up happening.
Totally.
The actual thing, it's kind of that idea that time isn't the most valuable thing. It's attention. Yep. It's not you being at the dinner table with the family, because you'd be at the dinner table with the family doing email under the phone underneath the table, like, and not really giving them attention. That could almost be worse than you not being there at all, right?
Yep.
So it's not time, it's attention. Well, it's not your calendar, it's the actions. It's what you're actually doing. Because you could have workout in the calendar every morning, but are you actually going to do that?
Right.
And it's not even so much
you get
the
no
calendar.
credit for putting it in the calendar.
Right. And there's a lot of things that don't get put into a calendar, right? Like I don't have call mom on the calendar. I don't have hug Heather on the calendar. Both of those things are on my checklist. Like literally I have a checkbox every day. Did I hug Heather yesterday?
Yep. Because
I know how valuable one of her love language is physical touch. And she feels that. She feels love when I do that. There's nothing more that I want in my life. My first principle is family first. ... If they need me, I come running. That's what I like. What does that mean when you say family first? Well, it just means that like if push comes to shove, you ask like, how do you actually make decisions? You make decisions in peacetime so that when the battle comes, when it's wartime, decisions have already been made. So Heather didn't grow up this way. I did. And she's seen the value of this. I grew up that like if something was happening in your family, we've had plenty of family issues and problems, and my parents are separated and divorced, so we're not the Brady Bunch and far, far from it. But one of the really important things that I inherited as a value was if your family needs you, you drop everything and you come running to them and you sit next to them until the storm has passed. So there was a time when Heather and I were first together that her dad went into the hospital. He fell and they were like, it's not a big deal. Don't come down. And so anyway, that's what they're telling Heather. Heather called me at work and she's like, hey, my dad fell. He's in the hospital. I was like, I'll be there in 3 minutes. And she's like, be where? I was like, I'll be home in 3 minutes. We're going to drive down to Connecticut and go see him. She's like, I've seen your calendar. You have like 6 meetings this afternoon. I was like, doesn't matter, right? Like it is that thing. So I'm setting it up ahead of time because otherwise I go, yeah, you're right. He said he's okay. And the doctors don't think it's a big deal. Cool. Because I did have these 3 meetings. It would be kind of a big deal to kind of reschedule those. One of them is really important. It's a potential partner and you justify it. But then now what we're doing is we're not living in congruence with our values. You said beforehand, this was the way we were going to conduct ourselves. Now, because you're truly up against it, there's no decisions. You go do those things. So if you're saying this is what my life is going to look like across a week, a month, and a year, these are the values to me. These are the things I'm going to do. So I am going to go to the gym 6 days a week. Now it's just a matter of like, that's the deal. Like we're doing that thing. You said it. Don't negotiate with your mind. Like your mind is a terrible thing to negotiate. It's going to have all of these biases and this default programming and this thing that's going to edge towards immediate pleasure versus long-term fulfillment. Always. And when you push up against it, it's the reason that you go, next summer, I want to look great. Because when it's far enough away, your mind is always going to go, yup. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to get in shape and we're going to eat right. And we're going to start running and lifting. We're going to have a 6-pack and we get down to the beach. Everyone's going to be like, oh my God, you're in such good, and that feels so good. And then guess what happens when it's, 4 months before that, when you need to be doing those things and someone's like, you want a cookie? You're like, yeah.
Yep.
That's the misalignment.
Your story or your explanation of what that value looks like reminds me of my dad. Anytime I was growing up, in college, and I'd call my dad, he'd always, and he was at work, he would always pick up the phone. And it was only 5 to 10 minutes into the conversation that I'd realize he was in the middle of a meeting.
I love that.
But he
right?
always picked up the phone, and he was obviously to the days he still does. I want to wrap up this conversation with something that actually is new for me in terms of my vision, my anti-vision, this practice, this daily practice for me. And it comes from the conversation we had with Cal Newport. You mentioned this a little bit. He had this idea of like at the end of our conversation with him, I think we started talking about like, how do you actually put some of this deep life principles into practice? And his advice was to actually create a narrative of what your ideal day looks like.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think, this is something that I've probably played with before, but for whatever reason, it never stuck. And so I sat down after that conversation and actually sort of started thinking through this. And I actually came up with, I reframed it a little bit because I've always had trouble with this idea of the ideal life. Because the ideal life is like, well, I wake up in a hammock in Fiji, right? Like, okay, that's great, but that's not particularly helpful in building toward this vision, I guess, unless you want to move to Fiji, in which case, go for it. But for me, so what I reframed it as is, what does an excellent day look like? And then so with that in mind, it's like writing a narrative of your excellent day focused on the environment, activities, and people that contribute to your subjective well-being. And so I think this is, if nothing else, at the end of this conversation, I think this is a really good exercise because I think you can start to peel back into anti-vision because like, well, what is the opposite of that excellent day look like? And where in my life am I not meeting that standard? And then, okay, if this is an excellent day, then what does that mean for the bigger picture? What does it mean for the life I'm trying to lead? What hints does it give me towards my purpose or my mission or my values? And so I don't know if you have it, if you've done that exercise before, but I think that's a good place to maybe end this conversation or begin to end this conversation. And also give a little bit of homework is to like sit down for an hour and come up with like, give me the story of what a great day looks like.
Yeah. I do that practice frequently, actually. I have it written down at least every year for the last 10 years. I've done that. Usually it's a lot more frequently than that. And I think I love that you're bringing this up because I think this is the most powerful exercise. Because as we talk about is you're taking this kind of esoteric thing of like, well, I want calmness.
Yeah.
I want peace of mind. I want health. And go, no, what I actually would think is a little bit more helpful is the concrete, right? 6 coaches making 6 figures. But even actually that is like, okay, if that is the thing, what we want to do is go, what is the actual day going to look like? And actually break it down into a daily schedule. Now, you might go, well, wait a minute. Like my ideal, excellent, is that there is no schedule. I have this freedom to do all these things. Okay. But still, you can still break it down. So what does it look like? What are the component parts? Mine is just kind of without going like letter to the letter, but I would like to wake up around 6:30 without an alarm clock, fully refreshed and excited. Like that's what step number 1. From there, a quote, slow morning where I'm reading, journaling. It's quiet. There's a little bit of outside with a little bit of nature. There's a little bit of kids, but it's quiet, calm, and very reflective. From there, it's exercise. I want to go and I want to exercise. And what does that exercise look like? A really big, long mobility piece on like 45 minutes. I love that. I feel great with that. Followed by some strength and some higher intensity stuff. Then from there, it's a late breakfast with my wife. Hopefully my kids can be a part of that as well. Outside with really fresh, great food. The early afternoon or mid-morning is about work. So working on really meaningful things, building, creating, doing things with other passionate high performers in a collaborative environment where we are making, building, and trying to create a more meaningful, exciting future. That's like the big thing for me. I just want to I want to make the future better. So whatever I can do there. Mm-hmm. Then from there, the early afternoon is active. So something like pickleball or go for a bike ride or a swim, skiing, right? Like something active. The evening or earlier evening is a early dinner. And then I love to go and like get out into the yard and like anything was like stand in the backyard with a hose. Like I'm such like a
Dad
that
does?
or
Yep.
like yeah or like making like building a rock wall like that type of thing is like I just love. Then from there, because also what those represent is space, stillness, contemplation, self-diagnosis, like digging in, introspection.
Yep. And also the opposite of busyness, right? So it's also ensuring that you're not putting things on your plate, making commitments that you don't want to make.
Yep. Then from there, it's again a really great, healthy dinner, and then more quiet time with others. So our dinners are usually kind of lead into that. And by quiet, I don't mean like whispers. I just mean like no distractions, like fully present. If Maya's there, our 25-year-old, it's not quiet, like Hurricane Maya. So but it is with people that like of really close, deep, connected to people. And then from there, it's an early bedtime. It's like, then from there, it's like shutting it down.
Yeah.
And starting the bedtime process really slowly. Like I love, like, it's kind of like the same thing as the early morning, like turning a dial into the day, right? Where you kind of turn the dial, you get up, and then mid-morning is the peak of activity and mental, like, and then it's kind of the winding back down. So that's my ideal. I try to, and my goal, and I think that this is the right way to do this, at least it's one of the better ways I've found, is that explorative process, and then the every day, week, month, and year, how can I get closer to that, is the actual thing, right? Yep. And then I actually interject that into yearly as well. So meaning I want to have a quarterly adventure, right? So in the summer, I want to be spending majority of my time on the beach, on the Cape with my family, on boats. And then in the fall, I want to do some sort of hike or some sort of outdoor thing. Winter, skiing, hopefully out west or big mountain stuff. Spring, do some sort of like adventure with friends. So that's very a Jesse Itzler type thing, where he's like you kind of have he has all these different, like, you take your daily vitamins, and then you have these big meaningful peak moments every quarter. It's like kind of like a inflection point. So you get out of the routine, and you have kind of these, you're lodging onto meaningful memories. And then he has this kind of like, I forget what he calls it, someone's rule, Calvin's rule or something like that, where every month you're supposed to go and just kind of do something out of the ordinary as well.
Take that. I like that. All right. Anything wrapping up this conversation about vision, anti-vision, and putting those things into practice before we bounce? It's
really goes down to what we've kind of laid as our overall framework, the three big pillars, which is awareness, intention, action.
Yep.
You need the awareness of what are the things that are going to move you closer to your goals, the strategies, the intention about how to go and actually do that, create the frameworks, create the game plan, create the tactics, create the ways that I'm going to get closer to that. And then none of it really matters until you take action and actually doing the thing today. Yep. And everyone starts a diet on Monday. And it's like, nope, it starts today. Like, you just have to
right now.
Starts right now.
So Ben and I just walk through vision and anti-vision, what you're moving toward and what you're moving away from. And if you caught it, we keep coming back to this idea that they work together in tandem. They're not separate. They create the channel that your life flows through. But here's the thing, knowing where you're headed and what you're avoiding still leaves you with hundreds of decisions to make every single week. Big ones, small ones, the ones where two good options compete, the ones where there's no obvious right answer. That is where values come in. Your values are the decision-making filter that sit between your vision and your anti-vision. They're how you navigate the space in the middle. And if you're not clear on them, if they're just nice words on a wall, they will not help you when it actually matters. So up next, Robert Glazer, author of the book, The Compass Within, joined us to walk through the process of defining your core values, not the aspirational ones that you wish you had, but the real ones, the non-negotiables that guide your behavior when life gets complicated. We're going to jump into that right after the break. We're brought to you this time around by Monarch, the all-in-one personal finance tool, bringing your budget, accounts, investments, net worth, and future planning together all in one easy-to-use dashboard. One of my goals for 2026 is to improve my communications with my wife about money so we are always on the same page, because managing money doesn't have to be a struggle. Monarch is designed to make your life easier. Everything's accessible on your laptop or phone, and their new AI weekly recap feature is really a game changer. It sends us both a personalized summary every week that shows spending spikes, changes in net worth, and upcoming expenses. Instead of one of us being surprised by something the other spent, we're both seeing the same picture at the same time. It's like having a financial coach that keeps both of us in the loop automatically. Monarch users report saving over $200 a month on average after joining, and 8 out of 10 members say they feel more in control of their finances. This new year, achieve your financial goals for good. Use code excellence at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with the code excellence. We are brought to you by Momentous, the NSF certified supplement brand trusted by Olympic athletes, professional teams, and some guy named Huberman. Here's the problem with most supplement brands. The industry is lightly regulated, and most companies cannot be trusted to actually have what the label says or have it in the right amounts. Studies have shown that up to 70% of supplements tested don't actually contain what's listed on the label, if you can believe it. Momentous built the Momentous standard to solve this. Every single product is NSF or Informed Sport certified, which means it's tested for contaminants, heavy metals, and banned substances by a third party. What's on the label is actually what's in the product, in other words. NSF certification means independent lab testing, not just the brand testing their own products. Grass-fed whey from European dairy farms, the purest creatine monohydrate available, and clinically validated nutrients across the board. This is what transparency looks like. Use the code CHASINGEXCELLENCE at livemomentous.com for 35% off your first order. That's Chasing Excellence, all one word. We're brought to you this time around by Monarch, the all-in-one personal finance tool, bringing your budget, accounts, investments, net worth, and future planning together all in one easy-to-use dashboard. One of my goals for 2026 is to improve my communications with my wife about money so we are always on the same page, because managing money doesn't have to be a struggle. Monarch is designed to make your life easier. Everything's accessible on your laptop or phone, and their new AI weekly recap feature is really a game changer. It sends us both a personalized summary every week that shows spending spikes, changes in net worth, and upcoming expenses. Instead of one of us being surprised by something the other spent, we're both seeing the same picture at the same time. It's like having a financial coach that keeps both of us in the loop automatically. Monarch users report saving over $200 a month on average after joining, and 8 out of 10 members say they feel more in control of their finances. This new year, achieve your financial goals for good. Use code excellence at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with the code excellence. Let's just jump right into this big conversation about core values. It's something that Ben and I talk about a decent amount, and yet still, I think it's something that most people either think is one of those things like, yeah, that's important. I know my core values, like, cool, got it. Or they just go ahead and just ignore it altogether. And so let's start there. Is in your experience and thinking about core values, do you find that most people are getting it? Most people are trying but getting it wrong, or most people are kind of ignoring it entirely?
Yes, and yes. So I've done this poll in rooms and in some of my speeches, and I usually ask, please put yourself in one of 3 buckets. And obviously certain groups skew, there's certain groups that have done this work more, but I'll say, do you, haven't really thought about my core values? Thought about them. Maybe I have like a word like integrity or family or something like that. Or I have like a defined list of 4 core values that are written down and I pay attention to. And it's sort of like 50%, 46 or 7%, and like 2%, have that written list. And, for a concept that I think people get and they kind of put like, yeah, that's kind of vague or abstract. Like, I actually think it's very specific, and particularly in the company context too. I used to think the core values were BS because I go to all these companies, I'd see crap on the wall and no one behaved that way. And I was very, but then I came to see really great companies and that their core values sounded different, and that all the behavior and reward systems in their company were about the core values. And so there's a parallel to that in individuals, right? And I'm sure we'll get into this, but I don't think one word values suffice. They don't do what they need to do. The most common people tell me are integrity and family, and I can tell you why both of those don't really work for different reasons. So yeah, I think it's a often discussed but misunderstood topic. And in fact, why I wrote the parable was I had this vision. Of writing this book about I had this framework that I knew worked. I had been working with people for 10 years, and I had this vision of writing this book called On Values, and being in Barnes and Nobles and walking by, and no one would pick it up because, like, who wants to read a book on core values? So I figured if I could show them what I'm actually talking about through a character, and they're like, oh, I've had that situation in my work with my partner and my community, like, that I could kind of like change the conversation and be like, hey, let's listen, because I think I can help you look at this in a different way.
Yeah, it was funny. I was just at a little gathering last Friday, and core values came up, and I could tell that almost nobody had
Rolled
thought
their
about
eyes.
them. And
Yeah.
then somebody said authenticity, and everybody was like, "Yeah, that's my core value." I was like, probably not until 2 minutes ago did you think that was a core value of yours.
Yeah, and look, they like authenticity, and they want to feel
Yeah.
that they're integral. But
Yep.
maybe it kind of starts to help with how I define it, which is, a core value is a non-negotiable principle that guides your behavior and decisions. Historically, people have been willing to die for their core values. We even have the state of New Hampshire, live free or die. They're intrinsic. They're not aspirational. So when you figure them out, they actually reflect who you are and who you've been. You can kind of like look back and be like, oh, that makes sense. They're consistent. They show up across all areas of life and work and relationship and personal decisions, which is why family doesn't really work well as a core value. Family can be a priority. And most importantly, I think they're clarifying. They help you make better choices about who to spend time with, what job to take, where to live, kind of these big three that I talk about in the book. So that would fail most people's, core values. That definition, they'd say, oh, well, authenticity doesn't really help me with any of those things, right? So, and particularly have this kind of validation thing, which we can talk about at the end. But when you start to look at it from that realm, which is like, look, what do I really care about most? And I would argue, I think a lot of us have a sense of our values, but it's kind of the electric fence test in terms of like, if you get electrocuted when you hit the electric fence, like the goal was to not do that in the first place, right? Most of us know when our core values are violated. The analogy I use in the book that people have told me really makes sense to them is that if you're driving a sports car down a tunnel and I turn off the lights in the tunnel, you're not going to see the yellow line. Your car is going to hit the wall. It's going to scratch. You're going to go, oh, this is bad, right? This is like, if I crossed a core value, I'd be like, bad. I knew that was like, did not feel good. I'm going to pull back. I'm probably going to hit the other wall and I'm going to get out of the tunnel, but my car is going to look like crap. And the knowing and being able to articulate your core values rather than hitting the wall would be like turning on the lights and be like, there are the yellow lines, and I'm going to stay in the middle, and I'm going to stay away from these guys. Because when we violate our values, it feels horrible.
So if we have these kind of like three ones that we've kind of said that might not be the right way: family, authenticity, integrity. What would be an exercise, or how could we lead some people to core values that would help them understand the non-negotiables, the clarifying, help make decisions? Let's tackle
those, right? I'll give you as an example, and I kind of covered this in my HBR article on the topic. So the problem when someone says to me integrity, I've heard 10 different definitions. Some people it's telling the truth. Others, it's their words match their actions, which someone's told me, and that's how he defined it. So I would, if you said that to me, integrity, I'd say, Ben, okay, what does integrity mean to you? And this is like, there's a scene in this, in the book with Jack and Jamie. And as I got into that, I'm actually going to get to what you actually value, right? And you might be, look, it's all about telling the truth, and then there's going to be a story for me. Either you had a parent that just talked about the truth or all the time, or someone lied to you very prominently and early on in your life, and it made integrity really important. Those are almost the roots of all values. So when I dig into that, I can find the thing you actually mean, and then I can show you how it is actually working for you and probably applies today in your leadership, in terms of where you live and your family and your friends. So same thing with family. What do you mean by family? Now, to some people, because look, there's some families for whom, family is one of my top priorities, but it's not an absolute. And I don't mean it's an absolute in any way, in that, like, I am not willing to let family do anything because they're family, right? Because that violates other core values. Like, do we let the drunk uncle just act totally inappropriate at the wedding because that's family? Well, that's not integrity, right? Or that's not some other value. So Same thing when I say to people, like, what's family? They're like, all right, it's a small group of people I can trust that have my back. Okay, well, now that's probably a little bit looks like how you lead. I bet it's how you show up for your friends. Some people say family, their answer would be, it's always being there and showing up. And I was like, here's a great example of why maybe always be there or show up or something like that's a better value for you. Let's say you have a friend and their father dies and you're in the middle of a busy week and you're trying to decide of whether to make the funeral or not. If you were clear that your values always show up, you're going to feel horrible if you miss that funeral. Like in a week or two, you're probably going to regret it for years because you violated something that's important to you. So those, like, they're kind of like signals, but if we could get a level 2 below for people and we ask the right questions, I will find out what it is that they actually value that they're using those one word things for.
What could our listeners, what are those questions that our listeners could ask themselves?
Yeah. So the values discovery process is sort of, talked about in the book and the course and stuff, and I'll tell people how to get it at the end, but it starts with these 6 questions and I'll go through some of them. People are always trying to write them down. So I put a list of them at robertglazer.com/6, SIX. You don't have to write them down if you don't want to, but they start with simple ones. Like, in what non-work environments are you highly engaged? And the answer I don't want to hear is like when I worked for Patrick, right? I want to hear like more like I worked for Patrick, but it was a small team with independence, and I had autonomy, kind of describing that. Another one which is in that list, which is super interesting, is what advice, help, or qualities do others come to you for? What do people come to you for to help them solve that you're naturally really good at? And then there's some inverse questions, and we can talk about why inverses are often a really great clue to someone's core values, because again, it gets to that violated. So what qualities in other people do you struggle with the most? Or what are the personal and professional environments where you really didn't do well? And again, don't tell me when I worked at Papa Gino's, which I did, it's my first job. Tell me like, oh, I worked at Papa Gino's and I had this micromanaging boss that was all over me and didn't let me do something, and I felt like I just had to follow directions and I had no independence. So if you take all 6 of these questions, you kind of fill out the answers on 6 pieces of paper, it starts to identify these themes. And what you do is you kind of group them all together, the similar themes, and then you start running them through this thing that I call the core validator, which will ensure that you don't end up with a one-word core value. And it will force you to word it in a way that it's actionable in decision-making.
How do we go? So I have one word.
Okay.
Values.
So let's use you as a real world guinea pig here.
Yeah, cool. So I started with 3, and I'm very much into I like it to be memorable. So they're all H's, but it's humble, hungry, healthy, honest, and happy. And I to me, each one of those has little sub descriptors for them. So how do I move that forward to be more actionable, to help me more?
So let's pick one of them. Maybe, let's look at maybe humble, right? And because again, if you're kind of, what's a humble decision or a not humble decision? So give me a sense of what is, and look, you're ahead of 90% of the people, right? Because you understand that those are recalling for you and their behaviors, but I think the wording will help improve it for you. So what does humble mean to you?
Yeah, maybe just to pull back a little bit. I started with a little bit higher, a little bit a domino before that, which is kind of like, what do I want out of my life?
Yeah.
Right. And so kind of beginning with the end in mind and backtracking towards that, I want to be, these are kind of like the characteristics of what I feel like as you said, if I don't have these things, I feel like I'm going to be the car bumping into the walls. Yeah. So if I violate these things, that's where I feel like I go off track. It's also the type of thing that a lot of people, like you said, that will come to me, and this is what we'll talk about, particularly the healthy one and the hungry, being a coach. For the humility one, which is also, full disclosure, borrowed from Patrick Lencioni, Humble Hungry. He does Humble Hungry and People Smart.
I love those as hiring criteria, yeah.
And it's because that's like, I really value being a part of a team. Yeah. And if I was to think, what is the ideal team player? It is somebody that's humble, hungry, and happy. So the humility one it's about collective wins, not about me. It's not about getting my way it's not about who's right. It's about what's right. It's about a growth mindset. It's not about I have the answers. It's looking for not only accepting, but looking for feedback. So it's not necessarily the old definition of thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. And I really like that. I think it was an Air Force colonel in terms of the humility one, which is humility is not meekness. It is actually the opposite. It is the courage to subside your own views in an effort to be open to other people's. So
you had you had some amazing phrases in there that I actually would love to see elevated to the like think of yourself less. Like that's pretty powerful. Like it's about the team winning, right? And those are the types of 2 to 3 letter words that anyone can say they're differentiated, right? But if I was interviewing someone, and I'd say, are they humble? I wouldn't ask them that. But I could kind of interview them like, think of yourself less. That's super. I know what that means. I know when people aren't doing that. If I'm making a decision, am I focusing on myself or on other people? So you said a couple of things in there, and I'd be curious, like which one really kind of hit it for you. Like what you said, what was the one about the team? It wasn't win it as a team, but it was think of the team or something like that.
Yeah. So the example I give there when I'm working with my team or I'm hiring in the hiring process is if we were on a basketball team and we're kind of thinking about our next opponent, and you really believe that we should play man defense, but the coach decides to go with playing a zone, are you going to like throw a hissy fit?
Yeah.
Are you not going to give it your all, right? It's because you didn't get your way. Does that decrease your effort? That's not what a humble person does.
Right.
A humble person looks for team wins, and regardless if they get their way or not, it's full effort regardless.
Yeah. So what I hear from you, it's really important. It's like put the collective first, right? And that is, again, and I think if we played with that wording or you kind of got that, you would probably see that in your family, that's what you're stressing to your kid and your spouse, and kind of like it's probably put the family first. In work, it's put the team first, and it's similar in friends. So that's my example. There's what I keep hearing in your stories is it's not about you, right? Put the group first, put others first. But why I like that as a more specific core value for you is you could very clearly see how that shows up for you probably in the work you do in the community and the team and family, and it would kind of touch all of those things in different ways. And that just, to me, that's much stronger. I know what you mean by that versus, humble. Because it's interesting. Another guy who kind of told me humble, and then we dug into it. And I always tell people, you'll see all the dots connect when you get this, right? He kind of was like, yeah, humility. And what he actually came out with is he was like, no one is better than anyone else. That was his. And he had this story from being, and actually all of his organizations were non-hierarchical. He had actually built this like he wouldn't want hierarchy. He remembered being 8 years old, and the guy next door in his, pretty good neighborhood was basically telling his son, if you don't work hard, you're going to be like that contractor who's working at our house. And he was so disgusted by that, and so like that this guy would just say that this person was a lesser human being. So, but again, yours are different. You guys would get along, right? But the specific, it was interesting because when you start looking at his life, that was his. And you want to talk about what triggered him? Like, if anyone was like, show that like I am better than you, like he was, and obviously that has team connotations. So this is why I think those drill downs just really get it more specific to you, and it gives you language that you can show up in situations and you say, look, in our family, you put the family first, right? And in our company, you put the team first. It's the same principle for you. I think it's stronger than humble.
You mentioned the core validator test. I think it's useful to just go through those questions really quickly with this idea of like, even if Ben, you end up changing this, but the idea of instead of humble, think of yourself less. The 4 core validator tests are: can you use the core value to make a decision? Does the opposite of your core value cause discomfort in you when you think about it? Is the core value a phrase rather than a single word? And can you objectively rate yourself on it? And just when you even, Robert, to your point, like, think of yourself less. Yeah, exactly. You can say, did I, today in my meetings with the team, did I objectively, did I think of myself less? Yes, no, give myself a score. And so I think that's actually,
did I put the group first? I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So with those questions, I think it becomes a lot clearer as to, okay, am I just am I just putting a nice word on the wall and making myself feel good? Or is this truly a value of mine that I can strengthen as though it was a skill?
Yeah, and those questions, it's interesting. The first two are, do you have the right theme? Because a lot of people work on the right wording, but you might as well not work the right theme. So it's like, do I have the right theme? And then, can I get the phrase? And is it worded in a way that I could rate myself on it? I argued pretty strongly with a nonprofit I was helping with a couple of years ago, because even in corporate, I think these things have to come up in natural sentences. I have to be able to be like, Patrick, you did not own it yesterday, like with a client. You blamed everyone else. That was one of our core values. And this nonprofit wanted celebrate diversity as a core value. And I was like, you can include all perspectives. You can think about like whatever, but you are never going to have a conversation that says, Patrick, on the sales call yesterday, you did a poor job celebrating diversity, right? Like, it's just not, it's not, in quoting that, it's just not gonna, you did a poor job in listening so this is really where the nuance hits the road. And you could run the process for individual values, and companies are very different, but this validator works for both. You should have ones that you could make a decision on, and you should have ones that you could sit down in a review and say, I did a good job. And I can test, Ben on this is this will be low hanging fruit, based on what he just said. But Ben, when someone shows up in a group and they are just all about me, and my needs, like, how does that land for you?
Yeah, it feels awkward at best, and terrible actually. Yeah.
What's funny is when I ask people this opposite test, and Patrick, we can test with you in a different way, which we'll just start with the opposite. People try to start off by softening with their response, and then they're like, nah, it's okay, I hate it. Like, I want to, and then the natural thing. This guy was saying, he just looked like a look of disgust when he said it to me recently, and I was like, yes, then we're on to something there.
Can we back up a little bit? Because one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about is the distinction between harmony and dissonance as it relates to core values. Harmony being we are sort of moving in line, our life is moving in line with the values that we hold. Dissonance is we're constantly bumping up against that wall that you were talking about in our car. Can you maybe walk us back to why does this work matter? Again, core values is one of those things that we can put on the wall. We feel like, okay, check that box. I've got my core values, whether they're strong or weak. But why do we do this work? Why does it matter that we sit and spend the time, spend the mental energy to actually ask ourselves these questions, to actually go through that core validator test?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna start with the why and then the dissonance. So I think the why is look, do you want to live up to your potential? And do you want to make better decisions, including your most important decisions in life? There are not a lot of decisions that are objectively right and wrong, right? Like I should steal or not steal. A lot of these decisions, it's just about, can we live with the outcome in 5 minutes, 5 days, or 5 years? And how does it feel like? And we don't like when we get them wrong. And so I think it's the ultimate decision-making rubric. It's the ultimate, am I doing what I'm meant to do and that I'm one of happiest doing? And that's where the harmony and dissonance comes in, right? In terms of, if you have that clarity, when you have that clarity, and this goes to my sort of capacity building framework and Elevate, you start looking around your life and you're like, I got to do half of this. I got to start moving away from this people and this community and this job, because this just frustrates me and boils my blood. And I got to double down on these things that are naturally, more, connected to me. So if I'm Ben, right, I'm probably coaching my kids and I'm building teams, and this is where I am just going to be happiest. And the board I'm on that asked me to go out and do something by myself and not talk to anyone and do any team thing, I'm going to drop that, because I realized, God, that's been frustrating me. And that work has been so exhausting. Burnout doesn't come from the amount of work you do. It does from the amount of things that are hard. And, there's the stuff that we all do that 7 hours passes, right? And you're working on it and you didn't even notice the time and you're in flow. That's when you're in your values. So just because you're working towards your values doesn't mean that things aren't hard, but you're willing to push through. It's connected to what you want. I mean, launching this book is hard. Launching any book is hard. But actually, if I didn't believe in this topic And I was like, oh, I got to go talk to these guys and like sit on a podcast for an hour and make this stuff up again. Like that, like versus like, this is fun. And I want to like, connect it to more people. So we're never going to be perfectly, there's things that like they have to kind of line up or be tolerant, but then there's also these polar opposites, right? And this comes down to relationships too. I talk about your partner in the book. And this is something I didn't understand. I always say my wife and I are different people, different personalities. We have different hobbies, but we're always aligned on the big things. I can't remember a really big thing about our family or living or whatever where we could get on the same page quickly. I think some people might get that backwards. They may see that, oh, we do some activities together and otherwise, but because these things are so deep and these are based on real stories. Imagine someone's married and this person and came from a family where their mother was told that they had a year to live and lived for 7 years from cancer when they were younger. So their entire orientation was there is no tomorrow. You live for the day, right? This other person they marry came from a family for whom, there was someone who always lived for the day and they never had enough money and they never planned ahead. And they were like, I in life, it is going to be about plan for tomorrow. And so they come together and this is spend everything and live for today. And this is save and think about tomorrow. You can get away, putting my hands for those can see it, if that's like, this one's a little off, but the other three. Yep. But imagine we invented 3 more scenarios like that, and you are in a relationship with this person, and every day you come with different it's like their Mac and your PC. That's really hard. And I don't think it's going to work. And I hate to say that, but the amount of energy consumed in trying to do that's very different than you play tennis and I don't.
So let's say someone finds themselves in that situation where they realize that a relationship they're in or the current job that they have is misaligned. Where would you suggest people, because that's a big, uncovering that is big, and just the awareness could be life-changing. But where would you what would be the process you would have them go through after that?
Yeah, and this is how I stay out of relationship advice. But I think, Ben, you said it perfectly. I think the awareness is, okay, this is why, this is my operating system. This is theirs. This is work. Can I manage around it with this knowledge, right? And does that work for me? Are there enough other things that are deep that because again, you can manage around 1 or 2. And some people don't have lined up core values, but they don't have opposite core values. Mm-hmm. But imagine, Ben, like that inverse, right? If your partner was that inverse, they always want to do things on their own. They don't believe in anything about the collective, and but you thought they were, you fell for them. They were cute and attractive, and you had fun. But then you sit down and you start figuring out your family values and how you're going to build your life and your friends, and you're like, we have different operating systems, and so. Mm-hmm. I think first is awareness, and then I think with that awareness, you can make a good decision. It's obviously an easier choice in your job. And I like to say that when you realize that your job could be your vocation, the type of work you're doing, or you could be doing the right work in the wrong place, as you'll see in the book. And my advice is the opposite of what I give companies. I always say, be wary about the people that quit and stay. But I think that you will set yourself free in your company. We all can't have the Jerry Maguire moment where we drop the mic and walk out. We have bills to pay and people that need food and all that stuff. But I think the day that you realize that and you say, I'm quitting this job, it doesn't align with my values. I just haven't found my new job yet. I think you'll feel this immense sense of release. Someone who read a preview of the book and had taken my course sent me an email recently, and they was like, look, I quit my job of 19 years because I just realized it was an irreconcilable values difference. And I just was so worried about it. And I can't explain to you the burden that has been lifted. And look, sometimes what I've learned is that when you take some risk and you take this thing out that is negative in your life, somehow something else finds its way in. Every time I've gotten rid of a horrible client that I was building my business that I didn't want to get rid of because we needed the money, like something happened that week where the universe rewarded us with a better client or something different. I had someone come up to me after one of my keynotes on this a few weeks ago, and because these things are very personal and they land differently for each person, she even said to me, she's like, look, I have the opposite core value of my son on something, I realized. And it's really kind of killing me. But as we talk through it, I think whatever happened to her as a child, this became super important. She reinforced this probably so much and too much that her son just tunes it out and doesn't want to hear it at all, which is very common, right? Like kind of yin and yang. And I was like, that's hard. I get it. You got to understand that it landed for you this way, it landed for him this way, and that's kind of a danger zone for the two of you because you're inverse on this one.
Yeah, so in the book, it's Jamie, is that right?
Yeah.
Jamie, yeah. He kind of goes through this kind of, when we're talking about right now, but these different areas where core values show up: work, relationships, community. And you just kind of said that relationships, we're not a relationship coach, and that's a hard one. Work, if it doesn't need perfect alignment, but if enough don't totally align, making that change can create such a relief, such a release of the burden. What about in terms of community? And what do you mean by community?
Yeah. And just to finish on the personal side, I was actually working with someone on our team on their personal core values as part of a leadership training exercise. And I did know they were going through a divorce. We hadn't even talked about it. And as we kind of went through those three, I was like, how do those sound? And the person kind of looked at me and they were like, and I knew they fit, but they were really quiet. And I was like, what are you thinking of? And they were like, my ex is the absolute opposite of two of these. And I was like, yeah, that's hard. Like I get it. So the community is the one I think we forget a lot about, but where we spend our time, either the town we live or the communities we join, whether those are religious or activity or otherwise, right? They kind of should reinforce our values. So Ben, I also have a value of health and vitality, and that's been escalated for me after some health, issues in the last couple of years. And great example. And I actually had a guy on from England, the only time I use this, but I said, if you really focus on health, right? And you want to be around people in health, and you live in Newcastle, England, you are, I don't know if you guys know, you are living in the wrong place. Everyone goes to the bar at 2:00 in the afternoon, and it's kind of an everyday thing, right? So you're either going to hold out of that and feel kind of bad, or you're going to go and participate and feel bad. And you probably, if that's the most important thing in your life, then you probably want to live in Park City, where you can go out and play pickleball. The social life does not revolve around drinking. So imagine we have someone, and there's some of this in the book and the characters, who has a core value of include all perspectives. They have curiosity, and they like talking to people, and they like hearing different viewpoints. And they live in one of these towns where everyone's got a red sign or a blue sign, and you better pick what team you're on or other. It's just not gonna feel really good to be in this place where the things that are reinforced are the things that are not tied to you. And I was coaching an executive team on their values, and I saw this woman, and she just had the moment, and she said it, and she was like, my town is not, she had the epiphany. It was pretty interesting. She's like, my town does not suit my values. It's just not. I don't know what she did with it. I don't know what she was going to do with it. And again, there are different elements of community, but willpower is really hard. And you're much more likely, if you surround yourself with like-minded people, you're going to emulate the behavior of the group. And when the behavior of the default of the group is not something you want to do, and you'd have to spend all day trying not to do that, you're not really setting yourself up for success with that.
It's hard to change that in the community, right? So is the suggestion to move?
I mean, there's different definitions of community. But again, imagine if you're
or change
right.
your friend group, or
you could friend your friend group or your activities, or maybe make a decision not to do something. So if I promise you, this guy, the no one better than anyone else guy, he doesn't live in a gated community, right? But imagine that he just didn't think of that, and he'd been telling his kids, you're not better than anyone else, and he moves into a gated community, where people can't get in, or literally are keeping people out. He's eventually going to be like, oh, this is I'm living a lie. This is not what I'm going to do. So yes, you might not have to move. And look, we all move at different points in our life. So I think this is just a good to have on your checklist for, or me and my wife and I, we're going to be empty nesters in a couple of years. Where and how do we want to spend our time, right? This is a good checkpoint for who are the type of people we want to move to, or as we think about where we spend our time or the community. I think, for a lot of people, picking up and moving is hard, but we all have a next move. And sometimes it's a community is the town. Sometimes it's literally the street or the community, or sometimes it's the activities, that you're doing. I think it's different. I think it's different in each area. But yeah, I'm someone who likes places that are, approachable and interactive. And I would never want to be in a place where it feels like you can't talk to your neighbors, or you can't walk on their lawn, or some, security apparatus. That just doesn't align with my sort of ethos.
I believe, Robert, I think you've got it on your website. I believe you've got 5 core values. Ben, I think you listed 5. Is there a magical number? Is 10 better than 5? Is 3 better than 5? And then as a follow-up, do we also want to think about whether we have 3 or 4 or 5? Do we want to stack rank them in some way? Is there a value to having a hierarchy in place within those values?
Yes. Love that question. 3 is better than 10. 5, because I am find a better way and share it as my So my core values are find a better way and share it, health and vitality, respectful authenticity, long-term orientation, and self-reliance. So because I'm a tinkerer and whatever, I have a hard time doing less. So that's almost why I have 5. I think for most people, 3 to 4 is good. We have 3 in our company. Everyone in our company could tell you, own it, embrace relationships, and excel and improve. They don't need an index card. It's been on their performance review, is in their hiring, and all that stuff. So I actually think 3 to 4 is a good sweet spot. Sometimes you have 2 that say the same thing and you can combine them. Your question about hierarchy is super important, because yes, I think once you have, so there's 101, let's get our values, and then there's 2R2, let's use them. And then 202 to 303 is you should have a hierarchy. And why you should be clear what the hierarchy is, because some of the hardest decisions you have to make, it's like choosing between your children, are when you have a situation that forces you to choose between one value and the other, because you're really going to struggle on that. So I had someone, I did her values with her, and 2 of her values were always tell the truth, and the other was never cause harm. And I was like, I was like, we should talk about this, because I could see some situations in your life. And she had a clear answer. Someone might have had the other answer. So to her it was, and now I'm going to forget what it was, but I think it was, you never do harm unless it means you're lying, and then you tell the truth. Because if you find out that your best friend's partner is having an affair, are you going to tell them? Or are you going to let them get embarrassed? I think in order to be able to, again, imagine how many nights sleep you would lose over that decision, versus if you knew your core values and you actually knew which was higher, you're like, I can live with this decision. What I can live with is, I can't live with the one if she comes to me 2 months later and said, you knew the truth and you didn't tell me, I can't live with that. I can live with her causing her some pain, knowing that I was the person that told her the truth, right? So yeah, this gets into the advanced aspects, but if you give me anyone's two values, I can come up with a situation that will put those in conflict, and then it's interesting.
How do we protect against these things just being aspirational? You hear these and they're like, oh yeah, that one. Oh yeah, that sounds like I want to be like that type of person, or even like goal oriented and missing the trueness. I guess I'm answering with the kind of the tests that you run it through. Yeah.
Well, this is where I say, you should be able to connect it. You should be able to connect it to a formative experience in your life, a positive or negative one. When Jamie has this epiphany in the book, when he figures out his value, most people do. When you actually figure him out, like this guy with a hierarchy, and like it looks like a stencil, and you like start putting it back on. You're like, that relationship, that job, like it goes all backward looking. It's not this is what I want to be. This is who I've always been. If you go pull out, and I've done this, if you pull out your report cards from school, those words will probably be in there. You literally, like, my report cards from first and second grade said he wants to do things himself, and he doesn't want to follow instructions, and he wants to figure out the better way to do it. And he's very respectful about it. So I actually did this with my company. My mom found the preschool report card I had from 5 years old, and I took it and I rewrote it up as a 360 review, like changing out the name Bobby to Bob and playmates to colleagues. And I put it up in front of the company, and I was like, look, this is why 360 is important. Feedback is important. Like, who thinks that this is pretty accurate? And they're like, that is dead on, like 360 review of you. And then I showed them that it was my report card at 5 years old in preschool.
Wow.
And it was the same, here's what he likes to do, here's what he doesn't like to do. And that's how, to me, how you know you found the right thing. It's not, you're not doing it for marketing. It actually, it feels fundamentally, right or wrong to you. To the health thing is interesting. I don't know why, and I don't know how, but like my cousin, we used to throw out my grandmother's cigarettes and put these stickers everywhere, the kiss me, I love you. Like, she was so mad at us, but like at a young age, we were like, this is not healthy.
That's awesome. You had this 101, 202, 302. For the 202 version of the use them.
Yeah.
How do leaders or individuals actualize them?
Yeah.
Instead, turn them from as you said, you walk in and they're posters on the wall to operationalizing our values.
So different in a company sense. We could have a whole different discussion about that because I've consulted some companies on that. But let's say you go buy this book and you do the course that you can get with it for free this week and you come up with your list. You're going to want to road test it. And so what I suggest to people is write them out, put them on your desk. Over the next couple months, look for these 3 scenarios to kind of shape them. Look for, this is really painful and hard and I'm frustrated by it. And I can look on my values and be like, is this captured in one or more things here, or what would capture it? This is awesome and I'm energized and I love doing it and I can do more of it. That should be the positive wording. The frustration should probably be the negative wording it should be the inverse. And then third is like, you have a decision. You have an important decision to make. Like, go back and look at that list and be like, as worded, do these things help me make a better decision? When I think about long-term orientation on stuff, I think a lot about, even as I launched this book, I had some opportunity to like spend, some short-term money that was expensive, but that I thought would really change the long-term trajectory of the book. And I was like, I should definitely do that. And I remember even after COVID, I was so frustrated in our industry. I mean, fitness was even worse, but I always like to focus on, in my business, I had a president who kind of ran the day to day, and I like to focus on what were we doing 3 months from now and 6 months from now and 9 months from now. But the world couldn't look past 90 days and every board 90 days. And so I was forced to be short term for about a year. And I could sense how frustrated I was getting because it was, everything I was doing was reactive. It wasn't the stuff I like to do, which was to figure out the next and better thing and plan on how we were going to get there.
Let's start to wrap this up. I've got one question maybe that can get us to the end, which is, as you've done this work with people, as you've asked them these questions, as you've asked them the follow-up questions, have you ever found that somebody came to a set of core values that was already aligned with the life that they were living? In other words, have you ever, when you do this work, have you ever found people already in harmony and they're like, oh, cool, great, I figured it out? Or is it the case that almost everybody, if not everybody, has a degree of dissonance built in for whatever reason? We've all got it. And this work is the work necessary to bring it closer to harmony.
Well, what's super interesting is it's a little bit of both. It's amazing how much you've done this by hitting the walls and banging up your car a little bit. To the point of that guy last week, the no hierarchy, the no one's better than anyone else and had designed these flat organizations. It just, when we had that discussion, he was like, oh, like that next level of awareness maybe will save him a little bit of time next time before he gets it, or ask a better interview question to someone about what's your belief on hierarchy or how teams should be oriented. So I think we tend to get there by hitting our car along the wall. What I'm hoping is that, and it is fascinating to people how they have done these things or mapped out these things or found their way to a job that was the opposite of something, that drove them nuts about a core value. Just without the ability to name it, you're adding a lot of complexity. So I think the ability to name and label it, as Ben was a good example in this discussion. He kind of knows these things. He's around them. He gets there probably pretty quickly. But I bet if he switches that humble to, whatever we decided on, it's about the group.
Put the group first.
Put the group first. he's going to go back and probably already change some language and some policy and some interview and get there faster and probably make one less bad hire in the next year because of that. He's already got the wording. See, he rattled it right off. He didn't need to look at a piece of paper or, that's how you want them to sound and feel. And I'm guessing you'll see that language in something he's doing down the road.
Is there a value that you see pop up frequently? Is there something that is kind of like maybe people, or maybe in a certain way that people, when you help them discover it, that you kind of like always is in your back of your mind, you're like, this is one that a lot of people have. Just help move people forward.
You guys get
this
the good
process.
question awards because we have not talked about these things, but these are all discussions I've been having. Like, we're actually going to take all this data that we're starting to get around the book launch of people sending us our values and try to map out, like, are there like 20 common themes? Because I'm starting to hear and see there are definitely people who are like, again, that sort of, you need to include all perspectives. There's one about like constant and never ending improvement, like people who constantly have to improve things or tinker with them. There's definitely people in this realm of like team over self. What's super interesting is I've had 2 conversations in the last couple of weeks with people around their version. They grew up in the Midwest and South, and they have this aversion to this fake authenticity. Like this, we pretend to be nice and then we go talk about, others behind their backs and say stuff. And so both of them told me an almost identical story, and I can't remember how they worded it. But so I think they're ones that are affected by certain cultures and regions. But I hope in a year to have kind of a little bit of a values genome project to say everyone's is a little bit different, but here are, because I think archetypes are helpful in discovery, but here are kind of 20 groupings that seem to come up a lot. Trust is one.
We'll have you back on because I've done this exercise, but it's all based off of singular words, right? Here's the 100, trust, authenticity, integrity, hard work, customer service, all of those things that you pick and you kind of go like, oh, those. For somebody that's not creative, I love that.
Right.
Right. If you had those in the phrasal.
And I don't want to give people the word. I want to give them the concept. And that's the problem with all those keyword exercises. What they encourage you to do is jump to the end. There are lots of words that I like. I like authenticity and like it stops you from doing the work. And if you answered these 6 questions and you started circling in all the different themes that were the same, you'd start to see some words and stuff pop up, that wouldn't come up in the concepts that don't come up in a straight keyword list. So yeah, most of the exercises out there are pick the keywords that resonate, with you. But this process is, if you can figure out the why if you can kind of figure out, this theme that pops up over and over again, if you can connect it to something and be like, yeah, that's definitely, I bring up the trust one. I've worked with some people who the why archetype, they are trust. And I tested this guy yesterday. When you are trust, if you ask a trust person, if someone violates your trust, does it matter what they did, or are they dead to you? They go, they're dead to me. Right. And this guy actually grew up in a foster home and 5 different parents. He started telling me the story. And like, so that's when you can understand that, like, this is just a keyword. This is like a really, like, I had to sort out as a young kid being put in these homes, whether this was a safe environment and I could trust people quickly. And so that is now my default way that I lead and manage and sort. And he tells people that work with him, if you violate my trust, it's unrecoverable, right? Like if you can make mistakes and all that stuff, but if you lie to me or you do something like this, like, we're not coming back from it. That's so much deeper than a keyword because you understand why it's important to you.
All right. So you just heard Robert walk us through the process of discovering your core values, the 6 questions, the core validator, how to move from vague one-word values to specific operational filters you can actually use. And if you were paying attention, you heard him say something over and over again. You got to write it down. Not think about it, not talk about it, write it down, because clarity doesn't exist in your head. It emerges through articulation. And that's exactly what Mark England is going to show us next. Mark is the co-founder of the Enlifted Method, and he introduced us to something called Kydland's Law, which says any question sufficiently worded and written down is half answered. And in this conversation, he walked us through why writing things down, your questions, your options, your values, creates the space and clarity you need to actually move forward. Your vision, your anti-vision, your values, they're not real until you put them down on paper. So this next conversation is all about why that matters and how to do it. We're going to jump into it right after this break. We're brought to you by Cozy Earth, premium bedding and bath products designed to make your sleep environment the most comfortable part of your day. Sleep is one of the 5 factors of health. You know this, and it's a non-negotiable. I hope you know this. Cozy Earth was created to make the hours from 5 to 9, the time before and after work, the best part of your day. Most of us treat our sleep environment like an afterthought, but if you're serious about better sleep in 2026, start with what you're sleeping on. Cozy Earth's Baja Bedding Collection is crafted with viscose from bamboo for exceptional softness and comfort. The fabric is temperature regulating, moisture wicking, and gets softer with every single wash. They also offer a 100-night sleep trial and a, get this, 10-year warranty, because they know that once you experience this level of quality and level of sleep, you are not going to go back. Learn more by going to CozyEarth.com. Use the code EXCELLENCE for up to 20% off the site. CozyEarth.com when you use the code EXCELLENCE. We're brought to you by Shopify, the platform making it easy to start, run, and grow your online business. Here's the thing. Most New Year's resolutions fail by February, if that, but starting a business in 2026 could actually change your life. The difference? A business gives you something to build toward, not just something to restrict or avoid. Shopify gives you everything you need to turn an idea into a real business. Hundreds of customizable templates, AI tools that write product descriptions and edit photos for you, and built-in marketing to reach customers wherever they are. Millions of entrepreneurs have already made this leap, from household names to first-time business owners just getting started. Whether you're selling physical products, digital downloads, or services, Shopify handles it all from one dashboard. As you grow, Shopify will grow with you, handling more orders, expanding to new markets, all from the same simple dashboard. Sign up for a $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/excellence. That's shopify.com/excellence. We are brought to you this time around by David Protein, which makes the highest protein to calorie ratio bars on the market, so you can hit your daily protein target without unnecessary calories or sugar. Here's the thing about protein bars. Most of them are loaded with calories and sugar, which defeats the stinking purpose if you're trying to stay lean while hitting your protein targets. David Protein is different. They've got 2 lines, gold and bronze, and both deliver 0 grams of sugar at just 150 calories per bar. That is very impressive. The gold bars pack 28 grams of protein, and their bronze bars gives you 20 grams of protein. For me, these are perfect for when I'm between meals or when I wake up and I've got a busy day ahead of me and I want to make sure I hit my protein targets. Don't just take my word for it, though. Try it for yourself. Buy 4, get the 5th free at davidprotein.com/excellence. Or if you're one of those weird people who shops in the real world, David is available in Target, Walmart, Kroger, Wegmans, and the Vitamin Shop. We're going to talk about something that you introduced to me called Kydland's Law. I'm really excited to get into this. You presented it to me first, or us first, as it relates to New Year's resolutions, which I want to get into with you, even though we're in October, so we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. We're getting there fast. But I want to start with what Kydland's Law is. And so I did a little bit of reading, and what I found interesting and what I want to start with is you gave me a definition that is Kydland's Law. Any question sufficiently worded and written down is half answered. And then in my reading about Kydland's Law, I found a few alternative framings, one of them being if you can write the problem down clearly, you're halfway to solving it, and one that's very similar, which is if you can't write your problem down clearly, you don't understand it. And so my first question to you is about why yours is a question when everybody else's is a statement. In other words, any question sufficiently worded versus if you can write the problem down clearly. So let's start with there. Kydland's Law, what is it? How do you use it? And why is yours framed as a question versus a statement?
Nice. There's a big difference between answers and questions. So long story short, and you can take this into you being the listeners, your conversations with people, you all are coaches, absolutely take this in there. Answers push, okay? Answers push, questions pull. Answers, I tell them, questions they tell them. And one of them, I'm going to rant on this real quick. Coaching hell on earth is thinking that you have to have all the right answers for your clients. That's extremely stressful. And guess what? Good luck doing that, because that means you're going to have to know more about all of your more about everything than your clients do. You're going to have to know more about them than they do. You're going to have to be smarter than them in all areas. And that's not going to happen. And the imposter syndrome is waiting out in the alley behind the dumpster. It's going to roll your ass. And so it's existentially draining. It's not fun either. Oh, by the way, most coaches that think they have to all the right answers because, one, it's stressful. Two, their timing is off. Their breath is trapped in their chest. And it's low-level coaching. Questions. Ask more questions and watch what happens. Questions will pull their information out of them, and then you combine that with low and slow breathing, and that, in my opinion, is generally speaking, that's the highest form of helping someone with their mindset. I can rant on that later. So there's some variations of the definition of Kindlin's law. Any question sufficiently worded and written down is half answered. So that is a statement, and it focuses on a question. Most people have questions, so it's more specific. Most people have questions about things. So I was just talking to you all before we started recording. I've run Kindlin's law exercises with what we could just say some very, salt of the earth, blue collar people, and the quote unquote highest level group of people that I've run it in was a group of 50 crypto and real estate whales. I got brought in to do this exact workshop because the guy saw me do it somewhere else at a mastermind. He's like, I want that for my investors and traders. Went in there, and every single one of those extremely high net worth individuals had unanswered questions, half-baked questions about some things going on in their business and in their life kept in their head. And the point of this exercise is, one, to help create space and clarity, okay, and help people get some better answers, because the quality of your question is directly correlated to the quality of the answers that you get. And a half of a sentence question about something that's very important. Questions kept in the head, let's just say they're a full sentence, they go really fast, they swirl, they take up a lot of space. Someone could have 5 questions about a move that they need to make, whether it's a physical move locations, change jobs, should I stay with this person? And those 5 questions keep circulating, so it feels like there's 555 questions when there's only 5 main ones. And what I've seen over time of running this is a very participatory exercise, and lucky everybody, we're about to run this thing live. Grab a pen and get a piece of paper, everybody, because we're going to do this thing. A lot of times people get the questions out of their head, and those 7 questions get distilled down to 4. And then the 4, you're like, okay, well, actually, this has something to do with something else. And here's the real 2 main questions that I have about this potential big life move. And it slows the thing down. It gives distance and space. People take sighs of reliefs of pressure. We also 4-step the process, and a lot of times, so it's just like a draft in college. There's so much to this. You get the words on paper, and then you can draft and craft the question to make it a better and better question, a more focused question. And guess what's going to happen to the quality of the answer that you're going to get? It's going to go up. And we talked about New Year's resolutions. Let's walk that back real quick. How often, gentlemen, and you're in this space professionally at the highest level for a very, very long time, in y'all's experience being in the gym, how many people are talking about their New Year's resolutions in July?
Exactly nobody.
Let's keep going. June.
Probably not. Probably close to 0.
May.
Still probably 0.
April. I love this exercise. I do this when we roll this out and people are like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. April, and we're going to finish it. April.
I think a very select few people are still talking about it in April.
The most attached people. March.
Yeah. I say yes. We're starting to get to people who listen to Chasing Excellence and Mark England probably are still thinking about it in March.
Yeah, why they haven't followed through, or why they trailed off. February.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd say there's some. There's some. Last week in January.
I would say that that's where the normies start to fall off.
Yeah, the normies fall off. My experience walking people back through this exercise, normies fall off week 3 in January.
Yeah.
Why? Partly because what they're doing is guilt tripping themselves after a sugar cookie and alcohol bender for the holidays. So they're like, I gotta do something, and I write out all this stuff, what we've experienced doing this, and also with our questions for the year. They do so New Year's questions, everybody. It's October 2025, and think of it that way. Think of it that way. So statements. This is what I'm going to do. It pushes. Questions. It pulls. And there's just something magic about getting a question sufficiently worded, and we can very much elaborate on that. We will.
Yeah.
Written down, and you might get the answers right then and there. You might get them in the shower 2 days, but the question has been posed. So something's on the way. It's going to pull from somewhere. You're going to get some insights to it.
You said half-baked questions stuck in your head, and you've mentioned a few times now picking up the pen. Why is it important that we write these things down? Why is it important that we don't just say, I'm going to go take a walk and think about my New Year's questions?
A walk and thinking about New Year's questions would be very valuable. And the fastest and easiest way to think about our thinking, I've verbalized this quote on y'all's show many times. The fastest way to think about your thinking is to write things down. Alan Watts, when we learn to think about our thinking, we become alive in a new way. Get the words externalized so you've got some distance, so you can look at the words, allow them to breathe, make them better if you've learned how to do that, because that's a skill, and it's a specific skill. You didn't learn it in high school English class. How to architect your language to stay focused on what's important, keep the drama low, build yourself up in your imagination, turn yourself into a very good listener. All those, that's what we mean when we say helping people get in their language working for them. Most people's language works against them, and questions kept in the head, half of a sentence, like I've said previously, that's actually working against someone, and it turns out to be very stressful. Very stressful because you don't get very good answers for it, and the thing, it creates a lot of overwhelm. There's a word I haven't used yet. A ton of overwhelm.
Say more about that. What does that overwhelm look like, feel like, and how does writing it down cut through some of that overwhelm?
Yeah. Writing it down creates clarity. Writing it down slows the story down. So the faster the story goes, the more myopic our focus gets. It's just like running wind sprints. When we go run wind sprints, our vision gets tunnel vision. We lose access to our peripheral vision. In this case, the big picture, our listening tanks, our breath gets trapped in the chest. All of that happens. And a lot of times when stories are kept in the head and questions, and there's also stories attached to these questions, all of that's kept in the head. The longer it stays there, the less likely someone is to do something about it, much less make some quality decisions. So inevitably they get into the indecision aspect of overwhelm. Nobody likes prolonged bouts of indecision, and if they play that indecision game for long enough, then they identify themselves as an indecisive person. And Teddy Atlas said when someone wins the belt, they get 30% better overnight because now they're the champ. When we identify ourselves as something, I'm unlovable. It's now 30% harder to receive the love, or I've got a lot of support. Now we're going to recognize that support in other areas. It goes both ways. It's neutral. It's Switzerland. And whatever we identify ourselves as, we get better at it super fast. So there's the indecision component, and you have very, in my opinion, poor and limited information with questions kept in the head because, again, Kindlin's law is sufficiently worded. We haven't elaborated on the question, and a lot of times people's questions transform once we get them out of this embryonic state of staying in our head, and we can develop the words. Better questions, better answers, better actions, better better life, and so on. And it's really simple. It's just not done very much.
Yeah.
When one of our, and I'll give a shout out to Megan Henry, She was an Olympic skeleton. She was the fastest woman in skeleton in the United States at one point in time. She was on the national team. I can't remember why she didn't make it to the Olympics. She's a high-level, Olympic-level athlete in skeleton, which is a crazy sport. And she brought this to us in one of our level 2 certifications about 3 years ago. And as soon as she said it, I did one of those. I was like, that is important. That is majorly important. And we've been using it since. And questions lead to options. Most people don't write down their options either. Questions and options go hand in hand. I can tell a good story in about 2 minutes about writing down your options. Okay, cool. This woman, and this absolutely dovetails right back into the dangers of being a smarty pants coach, and telling people things like, you just need to believe in yourself more, stuff like that. That stuff doesn't work, everybody. People keep trying. So this woman came in and she had a botched eyebrow tattoo job. And it had been haunting her life for about 2 years. It was about a 12 to 15 minute makeup ritual just to get herself, in her opinion, presentable to the world. If it was raining, she wouldn't go outside. Okay, she wouldn't stay over at other people's houses. It was negatively influencing her dating life and just causing her stress. And she goes, "Hey, Mark, I hear you help people with stories." This was in SoCal. I was like, "I do." She came over, we sat down, and she told me what the problem was. And I said, "Okay, well, have you written down your options?" "No." "Let's start there." And so I said, and people don't like hearing this, and it's also valuable. I can't keep living like this. Actually, you can. Trust me, you can. And getting the stuff that you don't want as options written down helps. So I said, can you continue to live like this? But I don't want to. I didn't ask that. Can you? Yes. Cool. I can continue, and you want to write them in full sentences, same thing with Kindle's Law. I can continue to do the makeup dance for 12 to 15 minutes every day. Okay? Next, can you get them removed? Yes, I can. It's 12 to 15 sessions, X amount of dollars, very painful, takes about 18 months. Okay? Is it an option? Yes. Wrote that down. Could you get them redone? Well, I contacted 2 eyebrow specialists, eyebrow tattoo specialists, and they said there's nothing they can do. Myself personally, I've got about 60 hours of ink on me, so I've been in the tattoo chair. And I said, we're in SoCal, tons of great tattoo studios. I said, I bet if you contact 10, so create a goal, 10 tattoo studios, somebody can help you. And that right there is me not having an answer for her. It's being creative and unattached. If she said, I hate that idea, I'd go, wonderful. Yep. She said, I like that idea. I said, wonderful. I'm Switzerland in the coaching space. You've heard me say that, Patrick. Yeah. You've seen me do it. And so we wrote that down. Contact 10 tattoo studios. And I said, are there any? Do you have any other options? I didn't see any. She didn't see any. She goes, I'm gonna take choice C. And she ended up, the first tattoo studio she called, they're like, nah, I can't do anything. Second one, they said, send over some pictures. They're like, oh, we got you. 2 sessions, 2 30-minute sessions, $250 a session. She goes, I'm in. And it helped a lot. Here's another good one too. On her way out the door, oh, by the way, she was a PhD psychologist. On her way out the door, as soon as her hand hit the doorknob, she turned around and she goes, oh, Mark, by the way, if you had told me I just need to love myself more, I would have gotten up and walked out.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
For example, like that, Mark, going back to the beginning, I'm just trying to pull it all together in terms of the questions versus statement. What's the questions that we got the options. What is the questions that would have been right for her?
How big of a problem is this for me? She already answered that. Got her moving. Really, the main question was, what are my options here? Mm-hmm. What can I do about this? She already identified that this is a major problem. What can I do about this? Can presupposes that you can do something about something, because most of the time we can, because we're participating in the problem being the story, okay? We're not innocent bystanders in our life, everybody. We're participants. What can I do here about this fill in the blank? And so that will pull options. It's a very powerful question, simple. And if it's written down, then you can stare at the words, slow the thing down, and think better. So even though we didn't start with that question, Ben, that was there. And she that's what a lot of people, when they book in for mindset coaches, they have asked themselves or decided they need some help. What can I do about this issue? And then you get
one
into
of the things. Yeah, one of the things I came across when reading about this sort of exercise is that you want to get, and I think I thought about it because I think it's embedded in the story you just told, Mark, which is one of the things you want to try to work yourselves towards, regardless of where you start. As you go through the editing process, what you want to do is you want to start moving towards specificity and away from vagueness, towards neutrality and away from blaming either yourself or external circumstances, other people. And you want to start moving yourselves toward outcome focused. So I hear sort of a bits of all of that, or if not, more than bits of all of that in that story you just told, in terms of you moved towards specificity, you weren't blaming anybody, and ultimately the options led you towards, what am I going to do about this?
Yes. And as the old saying goes, action dispels overwhelm.
Yeah.
Action dispels overwhelm. It's very true. Even I'll take, who said that? I got the quote. I forget who said it. They said, I'll take the fear of making the wrong decision versus the terror of indecision. I'm going to say that again. I'll take the fear of making the wrong decision versus the terror, the paralysis of indecision.
One of the things this is making me think of is Ben and I talk about a framework a lot. The framework is awareness, intention, and then action. First, figure out what it is, right? Raise the awareness of what it is we're talking about. Set the intention. Okay, because of that awareness, this, and then actually go forth and put that into action. How do you think about, with that framework in mind, awareness, intention, action, how do you think that Kinlan's Law fits into that? Or how do you think it can help us execute on that full framework, awareness, intention, and then action?
It can help at every stage of the game. Awareness. There's levels of awareness. I didn't realize it was such a big problem until I wrote it out. It'll help awareness. Once I've picked up pen and paper, even though it might seem not like much, you just took action. You just took some action. For whatever reason, writing things down is the easiest thing to do, and it's also the hardest thing to do. It's a simple. It's easy to do, and it's super easy not to do, to procrastinate. So you've taken some action, and if you haven't written down the issue before, then you're doing something different. So one, you've done something new, and you've taken some action, and awareness, intention, and what was the third piece?
Action. Awareness, intention, action.
Yeah. You got a better map.
Yep.
You got a better map.
Yeah, I like this. Patrick, you shared an article with me before we started recording about this Kinlan's Law. It was written from the point of view of people that have been operatives in the CIA, which is pretty wild. And they'd say, just I'm going to read a little bit from it, but this really resonated with me a lot in terms of, why, what Mark talks a lot about is like write it down, like get it out of your head on a paper, and it's why writing it down works. When you're operating in a high stakes environment, in the field, at home, hostile territory, neighborhood drama, foreign governments, corporate negotiations, it's easy to get lost in the noise, emotions, politics, assumptions. That noise is a liability. Writing the problem in a single, clean sentence forces you to cut through the fog. You're left with what's real, observable, and actionable. You can't build a strategy around emotion, but you can build one around facts. I think it's a really cool, there's so much. I think of when people are going through high stakes, high stress, high emotion, the eyebrow situation. It's so, the mind can actually act more like a kaleidoscope, where there's actually no clear picture, but lots of different shapes and fragments and things kind of coming and going. And you never get to sit down and, as Mark said, like, look at it, slow it down, and there it is. When you write it down, like, what are my options? And you go A, B, and C. Wow, that's so different than this thing coming in, an emotion attached to it, this other thing coming in, a judgment, this other thing coming in, a past experience, a fear from the future, and you never really get anywhere. This levels of awareness, which Mark just said, so powerful. When we write things down, our awareness goes up. It's so magnified, right? Oh my gosh, there it is. Look at that. Then, as they said in the article, I can build a strategy, the intention. I can build a strategy around this thing. What are my options? Okay, no, I could reach out to 10 different tattoo artists. There's lots of them, as Mark said, in the area. I really like that strategy. And then I go and do it. First one said no. Second one said yes. 250. Let's go and let's rock and roll. And all of a sudden, now we're moving forward. This kaleidoscope gets way more clear. We have an understanding of the things that we can actually do.
We are so over the target on this. One of the calling cards or hallmarks of the victim mentality, which I've spoke at length on some of the other shows I've been on with you all, and by definition, is a lack of or having no options. And a lot of times that's simply because the options haven't been identified. Awareness. Okay, and that was absolutely, that PhD in psychology was swimming in the pool of, I can't do anything about this. Even though she could do something about this, which she ended up doing something about that. And yeah, so it plays right into the victim mentality.
Well, it's what you said as well, is once you identify as 30% upswing, right? Because it's a really strange thing, but even things that aren't empowering, things that that hold us handcuffed, there's safety in that. There's a weird sense of ownership and power in that, and we want to do so much to follow through with that belief system. Like, there is nothing I can do. There's this, and that just swims and builds and swims and builds upon itself until you work through an exercise like you had her go through. You can easily get trapped in that.
Easily. Alan Watts said the average person and the college professor are just as easily bamboozled by language. You don't hear that word very often, by the way, bamboozled.
It's a great word.
It's a great word. It's a great word. And then also, you know, we'll either talk about it again or, yeah, when we get into the specifics of it. Something that you mentioned is single and clear in the writing process. So a lot of times questions, because they're kept in the head, they're all smushed together. So for a box owner, should I change locations and hire 2 new coaches? Those are 2 separate things. And when they're stuck together, the more things you stuck together, should I change locations and hire 2 more coaches and switch up my marketing material and go with CompTrain? It's like the more things get piled in there, and it's very hard to section that out when it's in the head. You get that lack of clarity. You get that kaleidoscope. And then also a lot of times people are asking themselves questions in negation. How do I stop being so hard on myself all the time? Versus how do I start being more supportive of myself more of the time? Those are 2 different questions. And very rarely is someone going to take choice B or be able to formulate their words like that in their head, first and foremost, because it's just a skill. That's all it is. It's a skill. You don't have to have the PhD to pick up your pen and get your words on paper and think about your thinking and listen to a couple of podcasts like this and make some changes with the words and go, yes, I like that better. I like how that looks. I like how that feels. That's an improvement on the story that I'm telling myself about fill in the blank, check plus. I just worked on my mindset. That's how you work on your mindset, everybody, is improve the words that you're using. That's it.
Yeah, you've talked about that before in terms of moving from vague, right? And you have your
Soft talk.
Soft talk. Thank you. I was going to say, soft talk. And soft talk might not come out just from these, I think you have like 7, 8, 9 of these keywords, maybes, shoulds, sort of all those. The vague can also is this comes up in the article, that the CIA article as well, but the examples they give is in personal life is like, I'm always stressed and I'm behind, as opposed to being specific with that and say, I've committed to 4 weekly obligations that each demand 5 to 10 hours, and I only have capacity for 2. Like, what happens when you do it that specifically is you're actually starting to formulate the answer as well. And this is why in the very beginning we said a well-worded question actually is you're halfway to solving it, right? I can't lose weight no matter what I do. Well, actually, I've been skipping workouts and I average about 4 or 5 hours a night of sleep every night. Boom. Like right now we figured out like this is something that we can control. This is something that we can manipulate. We are not bystanders in our life, as Mark said. You are in control and you can't do these things. So I really like that idea of moving from vague to specific, and maybe even like in the specific, like fixed, like numerical things, right? Like the actual measurables of it. Because once you get to measurables, like you said with the options for the tattoo, like let's reach out to 5 different it's like all of a sudden it's like, but like the mind changes. Instead of like, well, what if you, right, soft talk, what if you thought about soft talk talking to some tattoo artists? It's like, okay, but like when the level of clarity, again, awareness that moves when you get from this vague to specific is so powerful.
Yeah. And it's easy to do. That part, okay, let me take it out. Let me back up. I get those words jumbled sometimes. It's simple to do. It can be quite challenging. So easy to take out some soft talk. Maybe I need to spend some more time with my wife. I take that maybe out, and now I've got a solid statement, and I'll know whether it's true or not. I do need to spend some more time with my wife. That soft talk in there, you can maybe around that all day long. It's almost like I'm not taking my gym membership as serious as I could. Take out the almost like. I'm not taking my gym membership as serious as I could. Take out the gym membership, put in myself. I'm not taking myself as serious as I could. And then you start walking that back, and the hotter it gets, the closer you start taking the language and turning your awareness back in on yourself, because that's usually where it ends up. And it gets spicy. It's a ruthless path.
Yeah.
I understand when people don't want anything to do with it. And I also understand when people do want everything to do with it. Because, we're speaking to the right people here. Your people are not afraid of pain. They're not afraid of suffering. That's what they do every time they go in the gym. And guess what? If you want to get some, there is Murph for your mindset. Pick up that heavy-ass pen. We're not going there today. Pick up that heavy-ass pen and write out the top 10 scariest specific events that's ever happened in your life. Title them, write them out. Full sentences, erring on the side of more detail than less, and get those fucking things out of your head, which they're taking up a lot of space, like buoys out in the ocean, just not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. Sending out these pulses of information that is diametrically opposed to how people want to live most people want to live their life in their adult life, which is, feeling connected and confident and building something and being a part of something and being seen and enjoying their life. That's where a lot of people's atelophobia, the fear of not being good enough, is coming from. Those top 10, give or take, scary stories. And you want a Fran, pick up that pen. Go in there, write them out, because I can guarantee to an almost 99.99% of the time, people keep their scariest stories in their head, and psychological and emotional indigestion is a very real thing. You do not digest that stuff. It does not go away. It doesn't work like that. The story has got to come out. It burns going in, it burns going out, just like a spicy Thai dish. I get it. I laugh at that too. I think that's funny too.
Real quick, I do want to get into I want you to walk folks through this exercise, Kinlan's Law, so they can walk away with something actionable. Before we do though, you just had a phrase, it's a ruthless path.
Yeah.
You talked already about being Switzerland, and oftentimes in your coaching sessions, you are Switzerland. If you don't like that idea, I'm not going to take personal offense by it. I bring all that up. How do we, in this exercise, and maybe this is the way we can get into the sort of workshop end of this, but how can we ensure that we are in fact Switzerland or acting as Switzerland for ourselves in a process like this? How do we make sure we don't go in there and start lobbing hand grenades at ourselves such that we actually are doing more damage to ourselves than this exercise can do for us?
Got it. Very simple. Whether you're working with yourself or someone else, it always starts with, do I want to do this? If the answer is no, it's your life. It's your story. Okay. If or maybe it's 60-40. If enough of you wants to do it, do it. If enough of you doesn't want to do it, don't do it. None of my business. So if someone comes in and they want help, okay, great. That sets the stage. When I'm helping people facilitate Kindlin's law, it's what do they prefer? That's a very important word. So because when we get the stories, and someone can not write, I give that option too. When I go into gyms, I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to do, and if you don't want to do it, phenomenal. Just observe. You'll get something out of it. And most people do, because most people, they want to get better in this environment. There's some people out there that don't, and that's cool too. And the word prefer, and so when we start to draft and craft the questions, as in playing with the words, I tell the coaches, be creative with your clients and unattached. Okay, take out could and put in can. Yeah, I like that better because it's more action oriented. Or take out could and put in can. I can sign up for a gym membership. Oh no, that's too much. That's too much. I prefer could because it's not as committal. Meet your clients where they're at. Stay unattached to what they respond best to, and that's clean. And as far as to take that concept one step further, because it's most people haven't heard it. Clean coaching. I've got a mile-wide line in the sand when it comes to helping people with those scary stories that we talked about. If someone has a scary story in their head and they want to go in there, I will go in there with them. I know what I'm doing. If someone has a scary story and they do not want to go in there, you couldn't pay me $1 million to go in there. I'm not going in there. I'm not nudging. I'm not telling them something like, you really need to work on that. I don't know that. I don't want to know that. Which, one more thing on the answers versus questions part of the conversations, and then we can run this. Hell on earth, and I've lived it, hell on earth for mindset coaches in the space is thinking that you have to have all the right answers. That's hell on earth. Heaven is when you realize that you don't have to have all the right answers, and wisdom is when you don't want them. Real wisdom in the mindset coaching space is when you do not want to have the right answers for your clients. God could come down and say, here, Mark England, here's all the perfect bullseye at 1,000-yard answers for all of your clients for the rest of your career. And I'd go, I'm okay, I'm good. I've got good questions, I've got my breath, my clients have a pen and paper. That's enough. I'm serious when I say that. I'm serious and I'm sincere. Clean coaching. So, yeah, it's and that keeps things creative. If I know all the right answers, then I'm missing a lot, because there's a lot that happens in coaching sessions that's of a creative, instantaneous, intuitive nature, even though I don't like that word. It's real. It's just overused in the fluffy space. That if I'm waiting to talk because I know exactly what they need to hear, I've got the right answers, I'm missing out on so much stuff, and it's not playful. It's not creative. It's not interesting. It's not fun. One of the reasons I'm doing this for 50 years, I'm 18 in, is because I find this style of coaching very fun and entertaining and creative and collaborative, and it feels good. So trust me, there are different styles and approaches, questions and answers. There's a lot there.
I think that's actually, I know that was in the coaching context, but hell on earth, I think as an individual is also thinking you need to have all the answers, because that generally stops us from even asking the question.
Yes.
And then wisdom is not, I love that. Wisdom is letting go of the need to have the answers, knowing that in your back pocket, you've got this wonderful tool called a question.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that.
And perfection syndrome, having to have all the right answers, and perfection syndrome, those are pretty close. And perfection syndrome is a very sneaky flavor of imposter syndrome. I'm going to wait till everything's perfect and then I'm going to go do the thing. Oh, you mean you're not going to go do the thing?
Because nothing is ever perfect.
No. No. But I'll lie to myself and keep myself safe from being seen. Socophobia, the fear of being seen, that's a big one. Yeah, I'm not going to go compete. People might see me. Can't have that.
Let's get into it. We got about 15 more
it.
minutes. Let's give everybody out there listening some homework. How do they actually execute this practice?
Okay. Are you gentlemen still up for the thing we talked about earlier? Okay, cool. So do you all have, Ben and Patrick, do you have pen and paper? Okay, look at it. They're holding it up. Everybody at home, get some pen and paper. Hit pause, get some pen and paper. Now that you got pen and paper, 3 questions. We'll keep it, because we got 15 minutes, we'll keep it quickish. 3 questions. They could all be about your personal life. 3 questions. They could all be about your professional life, your career, a project that you would like to do, something that's going on now, something that transpired 3 years ago that's still in your mind. How do I gain resolution about that thing with Dave? Okay. It could be something you want to do. I might have already said it in the future. There could be 2 things about your personal life and 1 thing about your professional life. You can ask the main. Don't worry about the size of the question. Just the fact that you're doing this, you can apply it to larger questions, more intimate questions later. Just the fact that you're doing this is it's a massive win. Most people have never done this. And so we're going to get 3 questions written down about whatever. Okay? And here's more of the specifics on the writing. You want 1 thing per question. So like I said earlier, do we change locations and hire a new coach and get on call somebody about comp train? Those are 3 different things. You would want, if somebody was like, okay, well, here's what I want. Okay, great. Do I change locations? Question mark. Do I hire a new coach? Question mark. Do we implement comp train? Question mark. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. 1 thing per question. It's very important. It's hard to get clarity when you've got it's very hard. I like those words a lot, Ben. You get the kaleidoscope. The more stuff you stick in there, the more fractals you get. And make sure it's stated in affirmation. Okay, so how do we not have our gym membership fall off in November? Okay, not forcing me to stare at what I don't want. How do we retain our gym membership in November? How do we increase our gym membership by 10% in November? So state them 1 thing per question, full sentence, a full sentence. So I don't make the rules, not lose members in November. Okay, a full sentence. Make sure it's 1 thing per full sentence, and make sure it's stated in the affirmation, in the affirmative. That right there, those 3 metrics are gold. There's some other stuff, and that's plenty. And so what we're going to do, we're going to draft them, as in just like in high school. You get them on paper, get this in it, and then we're going to play with the words and potentially make them better. Better questions get better answers create better everything. And then we're going to get some breath in there. So this is drafting, crafting, and supercharging. First things first, we're going to draft. Then we're going to tinker with the words, craft. And then we're going to read them and get some breath in there. And what the breath does, everybody, is it creates very important space. I mean, your mindset. Your mindset is the words and breath. Okay, good luck separating your breath from your words, especially when you're talking. Stressful stories kept in the head. Okay, breath trapped in the chest. They go hand in hand. It's part of the same magic. And when we get better words and better breath, when the breath loosens up, the idea can sink into more of us than just if its statements are kept in the head or questions and the breath is trapped in the chest. A lot of times people don't verbalize their questions. So there's an element of putting yourself out there and also bringing this stuff into you. Because listen, there's so much we don't know about humans. We're magical creatures. Okay, I don't like to use those words very often. We're mysterious. We're magical. There's an energetic component to us. Okay, tell me what the imagination is, everybody. What is that? I'm living in two worlds. That's weird. I can see out into this one, and then I can hallucinate all this crazy shit in my head and make it Armageddon times 9, or no, I'm going to use my word and create some different and better pictures and then use that hallucination to move forward in my real world and make that happen in my real world. What the hell's going on there? That's weird and real. We all do it all day long. Anyway, I rant. Okay, so gentlemen, do you all have questions written out?
Yeah, I have a couple. Yep.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay, very cool. So what we'll do is I'll work with each of you individually with the draft, as you just read them and I'm going to listen, Ben. And then I'll go to Patrick and he'll read them and I'll listen. And then everybody at home, say it. It's okay. Say it out loud. And then I'll go back with Ben and we'll he and I, because it's a team sport. When I'm working with Ben, it's Team Ben. We're on Team Ben together. We're going to play with the words and whatever words. My only job is to find out what words he prefers, not know some stuff that he doesn't. I'm not going to outsmart that dude. And then I'm going to go do the same thing with Patrick. And then we're going to go and then say the crafted version with some breath in there, so create some more distance and space. And then see what happens. See if any answers come. Okay?
Love it.
All right. So my first
Ben,
one is, what does a good life mean to me? And by what virtues or standards will I use to judge whether I'm on the right pursuit?
Okay, perfect. Ben, what's the difference between having those questions in your head and having them written down?
Well, when it's what we talked about previously, but when they're in the head, they also go with everything else that's in my head. Include, for everything from like, do I like the sneakers I'm wearing right now to, I should update, really I should check the leaderboard because people have done the workout since I posted, and am I still in the same spot? To, I have to remember that my son's game got moved to the middle of the week, which it never is, and all the things, our head is a soup.
It's a kaleidoscope.
Yeah. That's so good because it's in there with everything else.
Yes.
Sorry. I got to get this out. Okay, Patrick, please read yours.
I got one. This is work related, but how do we increase the lead flow at the gym?
Perfect. Is that any other questions? One's phenomenal. Most people don't have one.
No, let's just go with that one. I like
okay,
that one.
Phenomenal. And same question for you, then I'll go back to Ben. We'll be out of here in 6 minutes. What's the difference between having that question in your head, Patrick, and having it written down?
I think what I love about writing it down is it's something that I've been thinking about and asking myself, but it's asking myself in that sort of like in between stages of the day, right? So you have only enough time and attention to ask the question, but never enough time and attention to actually come up with an answer. And so writing it down is like, okay, well, that's the first step in giving it the time and attention it needs to actually come up with an answer.
Yes. That's the draft, everybody. If it's same thing with a goal. If you have a goal, you think if it's in your head, you don't have a goal, you've got a dream. Unless it's written down, it's not a goal. Same thing here. It's written down. That's the draft. Okay, Ben, read that first question, please.
What's a good life mean to me, and by what virtues or standards will I use to judge whether I'm along that path?
Okay, cool. What does a good life mean to me? And take out the and, turn that into 2 sentences.
What does the good life mean to me? By
Perfect.
what virtues and standards will I use to judge it?
Very cool. Read that first sentence.
What does the good life mean to me?
Take out the good life. Take out the, put in my.
What does my good life mean to me?
Take out my, put in our.
What does our good life mean to me?
Which do you prefer, the, my, or our?
I would say the, because to me this is like it's a theoretical, but when I say what does the good life mean to me, I'm not saying it needs to be owned by everybody. But to me it's like, what does high character? What does success? It's like, it's the term, right? It's what does the term mean to me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very cool. And I know a little bit about Ben. He's a family man, okay? And so that's why I put those 3 variations in there. And I kept it clean because I always do. It's what does he prefer at the end of the day? What does the good life mean to me? Let's put a timestamp on the end of that thing and see what happens. Now, could put now in there, could put this year, this decade, next year. What does the good life mean to me this year? And a lot of times when you put some timing in there, it can focus, and sometimes that's a good thing, quote unquote. Sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. And if he likes that question as is, that's the bullseye. We're playing. Yeah, what do you think about that timing? What does a good life mean to
So if I was
now?
to think of that, it would not be now. I would reframe it to when I am on my deathbed, looking back, what will I have said a good life looked like? So that's
Cool.
this is my ultimate question, right? Is like this is what I try to, and maybe cheat code, but I ask myself this almost every day. This is my question. It helps me say like, these are the things I should be pursuing. So when I am on my deathbed, what will I have said that I'm happy? What will I have said is a good life? And am I living that through the virtues today?
And you could take that and turn it into a statement. When I'm on my deathbed, I will say, I did this, I did that, we lived well here, all these things. So then that setup is gonna force you to answer. Sometimes you got to go ahead and answer the question. What could you currently say now? What could you currently say now if you were on your deathbed that would be, yes, that was the good life. That was high level there, high level there, high level there. And I bet if you give him 10 minutes, he's going to get at least 10 things that he could say evidence-based now that fulfill that criteria.
Yeah, so it then becomes the statement is, when I am on my deathbed, I will say that I have lived the good life by ...
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes the interaction flows that way, everybody. And we got there through a question. Let's go to Patrick real quick, just for time's sake. Read your question again.
Yeah. How do we increase lead flow at the gym?
This year, next year, Q4, Q1, 2026.
Yeah, great. How do we increase lead flow at the gym in Q4?
Perfect. And just for specificity's sake, I'd put in Q4 2025.
Yeah.
Because the subconscious mind, even though I don't know much about it, it likes specificity.
Agreed. Yep.
You know? So go ahead and read that, Patrick.
How do we increase lead flow at the gym in Q4 of 2025?
What happened when you put Q4 2025 in there?
It immediately brought it down to what is within reason in terms of actions that we can take that we can basically put into practice right away. So instead of big, slightly undefined, quote unquote strategy, it's like, since we're already in Q4, it's like, what can we do basically now to increase lead flow at the gym?
Yeah. And because he's looking at what can we do now, he's going to get answers to what we can do now.
Yes. Yep.
It's just that simple. The reticular activating system, everybody, is a lens. It's just like a pair of binoculars. Things go in and out of focus, and you're hitting those paddles with your words. We could continue with this, and that was very fun, gentlemen. Thanks for playing. You guys are very, very, you're apex predators in the game, and I appreciate you all playing with your words in front of everybody. That takes some vulnerability, and I'm sure the audience appreciates that too. And that gave everybody a look at what you can do with questions once they're written down. We had an existential question that turned into a statement of what he's going to say. So, I mean, what's more big picture than, deathbed, life lane, memory lane, strolling? And then we got into Q4 lead gen with Patrick. So that's a very good example of the range that you can play. You can do anything. You can do anything with it.
How do you know, maybe wrapping this up, we've got drafting, crafting, and then I think you said supercharging was part 3. If we don't have, listeners out there, if we don't have a Mark England or an enlifted coach working with us, how do we know when we've reached, there it is. Now we can go and do something with the statement versus let's continue drafting, let's continue crafting? How do we know we've got it?
Good question. You'll feel it. Most people will feel it. And that's a very important point. Once the words are out of your head, the tension, the tightness, the stress level comes down, the breath loosens up, and you're more sensitive. And I mean not like sensitive and crying all the time. Sensations. You're more sensitive to the feedback that you get on a daily basis about your life. Breath trapped in the chest, head on fire, traps all locked up, butthole puckered, TMI. You can't hear any of the subtle whispers that life definitely gives to us. But you get some of that stuff junk out of your head, and wow, yeah, I mean, I do. Yeah, now I can actually see it. And then you play with the words, and you're like, then you just get that intuitive hit. You're like, and you can feel the thing because there's not as much static and friction in the way. So you really do. You bring another sense online.
All right, my friends, thank you so much for sticking through with this longer episode. We've covered a lot of ground here: vision and anti-vision, how to discover and define your core values, why writing it all down is what turns vague ideas into actionable clarity. But the real work starts now. These 3 conversations give you the framework, the essay we published a few days ago. Again, it's called Excellence is a Direction You Face, Not a Destination You Reach. It gives you the step-by-step process. If you haven't read it yet, the link is in the show notes. It'll walk you through exactly how to articulate your vision, your anti-vision, and your values. And again, if this resonated with you, please share it. Send it to somebody who's starting the year feeling stuck, somebody who keeps setting resolutions that just don't stick, somebody who's ready to do the deeper work. Thank you so very much for tuning into the show this week. 2 quick things before you go. First, if you want even more from this episode, go check out the full 5-3-1 breakdown. We give you the 5 big ideas from the episode, 3 reflection questions to help you process it all, and 1 key takeaway that you can put into action right now. The link is in the show notes. The second thing, while you're there, check out the Chase Club. It's our premium membership where we include bonus content, ad-free episodes, and a brand new Chase Tracker app. Check it all out at chasingexcellence.email.